He kissed his mistress under 1,000 chandelier lights. Then his wife walked in. Not crying, not begging, not broken. She walked in wearing platinum silk, beside a man so dangerous the room went dead silent. And then she said 6 words that turned a billionaire into a joke. "We have not been married since November." What followed was cold, elegant, and absolutely brutal.
Eels. So get this. The billionaire husband shows up to a gala, parading his mistress, thinking he's the king of the world. Little did he know, his quiet wife is a freaking mafia princess who'd already divorced his ass and married an actual kingpin. Eels. Ryan Caldwell lifts his glass, all smiles, and lays one on the other woman in front of 400 people while he's still legally married. He thought he was playing 4D chess. He thought she was weeping into a designer pillow. Eels. What he didn't know was she was already in the building, that the divorce papers went through 11 weeks ago, and that the dude standing right behind him, the one no one makes eye contact with, was there to collect a debt. Eels. Okay, before we dive into this chaos, if you believe a woman should never have to fight for respect she's already earned, smack that like button and tell me what city you're repping in the comments. I want to see how far this train wreck travels. Eels. Stick around. This whole thing is about to go nuclear, and not in the way he planned. The Monteverde Hotel is one of those spots on 58th and Park that looks like it was built from melted down gold bars. 18 stories of pure limestone. Eels. Its awning is so white it makes fresh snow look grimy. On the 3rd Saturday of January, the Hartwell Foundation books the whole ground floor for a party where a single handshake can make or break a company. Eels. And Ryan Caldwell? He loved that room more than his own mother. He's up in suite 1802, checking himself out in the mirror, retying a perfect tie just because he can. 41 years old, 6'1", with a jawline made for magazine covers. Eels. He ran on a treadmill for 90 minutes that morning just so his tux would hang perfectly. Every single thing about this dude was calculated. Baby. It's Vanessa's voice drifting out of the bathroom. Syrupy, lazy, and a little tipsy. Zip me up. Eels. He walks over, no reply. She picked red. A red so dark it was almost black, with a slit clean up to her hip and a back that plunged to her spine. Eels. She's 26, used to be a swimsuit model, and rolled into Manhattan 18 months back with a couple of suitcases and a mission. And yeah, the mission was working. He pulls the zipper up, slow, letting his hand graze her skin. Eels. You're trying to start something we don't have time for, she purrs. You started it when you put that on. She lets out a satisfied little laugh, turning to face him. Are you really going through with this tonight? With what? Taking me. In front of, heals her. She lets the name hang in the air, the one they never say. I'm taking you, he says, flat out. That's the entire point. She's not even going to be there. Heals. She's not going to be anywhere. He fixes his cuff. She hasn't left her apartment in 6 months, Van. She's a ghost. She reads books and gets her groceries delivered. I bet the doorman doesn't even know what she looks like. And the divorce? Heals. When I'm ready. He taps his watch, a thin gold piece from his grandpa that he wears like a trophy. Right now, the marriage is useful, keeps the old money board members happy. They trust a married man. I'll file in April, Eels, right after the first quarter earnings report. It'll be over by summer. Then he locks eyes with her in the mirror. And then you'll be wearing a different kind of ring. Vanessa makes a sound that's half giggle, half purr, and presses up against him, Eels. He lets her for a beat, then checks his watch again. Car's here at 9. Eels. 43 blocks uptown, in a massive suite on the 29th floor of the Arlen, Isabella Varley sat at her own mirror, putting on her war paint. She did her makeup like she did everything, methodically, and with zero mercy. A woman named Juliana, Eels, flown in from Milan on Wednesday just for this, stood behind her, silent, brush in hand. They'd been a team for 11 years. The dress was already on the bed, not red. Isabella despised red. Eels. This dress was the color of liquid platinum, a straight column of silk from collarbone to floor with one long sleeve and one bare arm. Eels. This wasn't a mistress's dress. It wasn't even a tech CEO's wife's dress. This was the dress of a woman who had already written the final chapter of tonight's story. Which earrings? Juliana asked. The ones my father sent. Eels. Juliana's gaze flickered to Isabella's in the mirror for just a split second before she went to the jewelry box. 2 massive diamonds, 8 carats each. They belonged to Isabella's grandmother, Constanza, Eels. A woman who buried 2 husbands in Italy and a third in New Jersey and never wore black to any of the funerals. Isabella put them on herself. A knock at the door. 3 sharp taps, 1 slow. She knew that knock. Come in. Matteo entered. Heels. The guy was 56 and looked like he'd survived more backroom meetings than he could count. He'd worked for her father before she was born, and for her since she was 19. He's downstairs, Matteo reported. How does he look? Heels. Matteo thought about it like a grandmaster considers a chess move. He looks like himself. Tell him 10 minutes. 10 minutes, Matteo repeated, closing the door. Juliana put the final touches on her makeup and stepped away. Bella, Heels, you will not cry tonight. It wasn't a question. Isabella's mouth almost curled into a smile. I haven't cried in 6 months, Julia. I'm not about to start now in some hotel. Downstairs, inside a long black car with windows to match. Heels. Luca DeSantis was staring at his phone, looking seriously pissed off. Heels. He was 39, tall, but not in a way you noticed right off. What you noticed was his stillness. He had one of those faces that stopped being just handsome around 30 and became something else entirely. Something dangerous. Heels. The kind of face you glance at, quickly look away from, and then can't stop thinking about later. He wore a black tux, black shirt, no tie. Just a tiny silver pin on his lapel, a little knot of rope. If you knew what it meant, you already knew who he was. Heels. And if you didn't, you weren't getting into that ballroom anyway. The car door opened and Matteo slid in. She says 10. She said 10 an hour ago. Heels. She says 10 again. Luca finally put the phone down. How is she? Matteo did that calculating thing with his eyes again. She's how she gets right before she makes a move. You know. I know. She was on the phone with the lawyer at 6 this morning. Heels. Anything left? Nothing. It's done. It's been done since November. Luca gazed out the tinted window at the fat snowflakes falling. A doorman in a fancy coat checked a watch he didn't need to check. Heels. A woman in a sable coat was already laughing at a joke a guy in cashmere hadn't even finished telling. Park Avenue at 9:30 on a Saturday night, doing what it always does. Matteo. Heels. Yes. If one thing goes wrong in there tonight, you get her out the service entrance. Don't stop driving until you're over the bridge. Nothing is going to go wrong. If anything goes wrong... Yes. Understood. Good. Heels. Ryan and Vanessa pulled up at 9:42. The red carpet was a war zone of flashing lights. 3 photographers were screaming his name before the door was even fully open, which is exactly what he paid his publicist $9,000 a month for. Heels. He got out first, fixed his jacket, and then offered Vanessa his hand. She emerged like a movie star, just like she'd been taught. One leg out, the red dress splitting just so. The cameras went nuts. They both smiled. For 9 solid seconds, Heels, they owned the entire street. Heels. Mr. Caldwell over here. Ryan, who's the lady? Ryan, is it true you and Isabella? He didn't have a wife named Isabella. That was another life, another guy. He just widened his smile, put a hand on Vanessa's back, Heels, and steered her through the storm. Inside, the Monteverde lobby hit you with the smell of money and lilies. White lilies, in black vases, in arrangements that cost more than your rent, and that nobody would remember tomorrow. Heels. A string quartet was playing in the next room. Coat-check girls in identical navy dresses took $1,000 furs without even looking up. Heels. Ryan, a hand clapped his shoulder. It was Greg Moulton, a partner at some big firm, his face flushed, clearly 3 drinks in. Ryan, you son of a bitch, who is this? Greg. This is Vanessa. Greg took her hand. Heels. Doing a little bow he thought was slick. Vanessa, where's this guy been hiding you? Nowhere. Vanessa cooed, sweet like poison. He's just really bad at hiding things. Greg laughed way too loud. Ryan laughed just the right amount. Heels. They moved on. The whole cocktail hour was like that. Every 10 feet, another handshake, another name, another guy whose eyes would dart to Vanessa, do the math, and then dart back to Ryan's face with a new unspoken understanding. Heels. Some of these guys had been at Ryan's wedding. Some of them knew his wife. Not a single one of them said the word wife. New York City is not the kind of town that brings up a man's wife when he's got a 26-year-old bombshell in a red dress on his arm. Heels. New York knows how to survive. By 10:15, they were in the main ballroom. The place is a massive rectangle with a 42 feet high and a couple of tiers of private boxes left over from its opera house days. They had 70 tables set for 10, Heels, a stage at one end and a dance floor. 411 people had dropped $12,500 each just to be in that room. Heels. So check it. Ryan's at table 3, prime real estate. He paid a boatload to the Hartwell Foundation last April just for this spot. He pulls out Vanessa's chair for her, all smooth. But across the table, some real estate mogul, Edmund Hose, heels, is already planned with wife number 3 and doesn't even get up. Oh yeah, he filed that away. Edmund's getting a nasty call on Tuesday. Champagne? Vanessa asks, already grabbing a glass. It's the Louis Rotary, he says. Drink slow, heels. She just laughs. I don't do slow. Tonight you do. He was about to say something real nasty. You could just feel it. When the whole vibe of the room just changed. It didn't get quiet. That's what people always get wrong about places like this. Feels. It never goes dead silent, but the sound itself shifts. The whole buzz of the room drops. The chatter on the other side gets clipped mid-law. A waiter just freezes, holding a tray of appetizers, totally forgetting his mission. Feels. And because everyone else did, Ryan looks up. There at the main ballroom doors, the massive double doors they only use for VIP arrivals. A woman just stopped, not because she forgot her keys. She stopped to make a point, feels. To give everyone a hot second to process what they were seeing. Feels. Ryan's glass clinks against the table. Baby. Vanessa goes, baby, what? Now she's looking too. The woman at the door is a knockout, tall, wearing this liquid platinum silk dress. Her hair is jet black, pulled back tight, feels. So the first thing you notice after the dress is the sharp line of her jaw. She's rocking these massive pear-cut diamonds in her ears, and that's it. No necklace, no bracelets, not a single ring. Her hands are bare. And behind her, like a shadow, is a dude, feels. Ryan has no clue who this guy is. Doesn't matter. He's been in Manhattan long enough to spot a man you're not supposed to make eye contact with, feels. The guy is tall, black suit, black shirt, with some little silver pin on his lapel. He's got the face of a guy who sleeps just fine at night. The woman scans the room, taking her sweet time. Her gaze floats over 40 tables, feels. She breezes past the governor's aide, a senator, and some lady who owns the 7th biggest art collection on the East Coast. She ignores Greg Moulton at the bar and Edmund Hose, who's now frozen solid. Her eyes finally land on table 3, feels. Ryan's jaw just hangs open. Baby, Vanessa says again, her voice all shaky. Baby, who is that? Ryan doesn't say a word. He can't. The woman in platinum is his wife, and he hasn't laid eyes on her in 61 days. Feels. Last time he saw her, it was a Tuesday morning in their penthouse kitchen. She was in gray sweatpants and his old college t-shirt, holding a coffee mug with 2 hands. Hair in a messy bun. She looked tired, small. He even thought to himself, feels, she looks like someone who's losing. Ryan, she'd said, I think we should talk. Not now, Izzy. Got Singapore at 9 o'clock when? Tonight, after dinner. I'll be home by 9. He never came home. Not that night. Feels. He was shacked up at Vanessa's place on West 72nd. When he finally rolled in the next evening, Isabella was gone. Feels. There was a note on the counter. Staying at the Arlen a few days. Need some space. He read it, folded it, and tossed it right in the trash. He actually thought, good, finally, 61 days. He never called. She never called. Feels. He fed the same line to his mom, his assistant, his lawyer. She's taking some time. We're working on things. Keep it quiet. But the woman striding toward him now, she isn't small, she isn't tired, and she sure as hell isn't his. She walks across the room, feels, ignoring everyone. Nobody dares to stop her. A few people whisper her name, Isabella, like they're seeing a ghost. She doesn't even blink. Feels. She moves like someone who decided exactly this was going to go down before she even left the house. The guy in the black shirt is with her. Not behind, not in front. With her. Just off her left shoulder. Feels. He moves with the clean efficiency of a pro athlete off the field. No wasted energy. She gets to table 3. She doesn't sit. Ryan. Her voice is dead calm, and that's what breaks him. In the split second he had to brace himself, he was ready for yelling, feels, for crying, for a total meltdown. He was not ready for calm. Izzy. He shoots up so fast his napkin falls on the floor. Feels. Izzy, I didn't know you were coming. She just tilts her head. No, you wouldn't have. Vanessa is up now too, and she makes a huge mistake. She grabs Ryan's sleeve. 3 different tables saw it happen. Isabella's eyes drop to the hand. Feels. Hold there for a beat, then snap back to Ryan's face. Introduce me, Ryan. Izzy, please. We can go somewhere. We're not going anywhere. Introduce me. The bubble of silence around table 3 was spreading. Table 2 went quiet. Then 5. Feels. Then 11. The empty dance floor suddenly felt like a stage, and they were the main event. Ryan gulps. Feels. This is Vanessa. Vanessa Cole. She's your girlfriend. Isabella finishes for him. It's all right, Ryan. You can say the word. We are all adults. Isabella turns to Vanessa, really looks at her for the first time. A slow feels. Deliberate scan from the red shoes to the red dress to the red lipstick. Vanessa. Hi, Vanessa stammers, trying to smile. It's not working. How long? I'm sorry? How long have you been with my husband? Feels. Vanessa's eyes dart to Ryan, the guy who was supposed to have this all handled months ago, but he's just staring at Isabella's earrings like he's in a trance. A year, Vanessa whispers. Feels. Her voice is way smaller than she wanted. A little over. A year? Isabella nods, like she's checking a number on a report. That's consistent. Consistent with what? Ryan snaps. Isabella turns her head, looks right at him. With the other three, mic drop. Feels. The dude in the black suit hasn't moved a muscle. He doesn't have to. He's just there, and his stillness is screaming louder than any action could. Ryan finally looks at him. Really looks. Who? Ryan says, is that? And Isabella says, that is my husband. Feels. For a second, Ryan thinks his ears are broken. Feels. He literally leans in like he's trying to hear the dinner special. What? My husband, Isabella repeats. Luca. This is Ryan Caldwell. Ryan, this is Luca DeSantis. The guy in black gives a tiny nod, like maybe an eighth of an inch. Doesn't offer a hand. Feels. His eyes do this thing that's not quite a smile, but definitely not friendly. Mr. Caldwell, he says. His voice is deep and quiet, and the way he says Caldwell makes it sound like a dirty word. I'm sorry. Ryan looks between them, totally lost. Izzy. Feels. I don't. We're married, Izzy. You and I are married. No. Feels. What do you mean, no? No. We are not. Isabella's voice hasn't changed one bit. It's the same level tone she used to say hello. We have not been married since November 14th. The decree is final. It was uncontested. Uncontested? Feels. I didn't. I was never. You were served, Ryan. I was never served. You were served at your office on the 22nd of August at 2:40 in the afternoon by a woman named Rosa Delgado. You signed for it. Feels. You put the envelope in your bottom drawer and went to a meeting. You never opened it. Ryan's face goes as white as the tablecloth. I didn't. You didn't read it? I know. Feels. That was a calculation I made. Well, my lawyers, really, he said. A man like that won't read it. He'll assume it's noise, file it, and forget it. He was right. You never responded. After 90 days, the court moved on without you. Feels. Decree was entered November 14th. I got my copy on the 16th. You got yours? She glances at a little gold watch on her wrist. About 4 hours ago, by courier to your office, which you skipped today to get ready for this party. Feels. So it's on your desk, unopened again. The silence at table 3 is now the silence of the entire goddamn ballroom. Feels. 411 people are trying not to listen and failing miserably. Izzy, don't call me that. Isabella, you don't get to call me that either. Then what am I supposed to? You are not supposed to call me anything, Ryan. Feels. You're not going to need to. And Vanessa, bless her heart, is finally putting the pieces together. You can see it on her face, a slow dawning horror, replaying the last 18 months. Feels. Realizing the movie she thought she was starring in was a completely different film. Wait, she says. Wait. Ryan, you told me the divorce wasn't. You said you hadn't even. You said she was. Van, shut up. Don't tell me to shut up. Feels. You shut up, Vanessa. Feels. Isabella sized them up, calm as a hunter watching a trap. Miss Cole. Vanessa's head whipped around. Yeah? Did he get you a condo yet? What, a place? Has he bought you one? It's usually around the 14-month mark. The last chick got a 2-bedroom in Tribeca. Feels. One before that scored a loft in Chelsea. Just tracking the data, you know. Vanessa's mouth was flapping like a fish.
No,
he
said after.
His divorce. The one that's already final, you mean? Vanessa's eyes glazed over. I didn't know. Of course you didn't, Eels. Sweetie, not your fault. He's a pro at this part of the game. He's had tons of practice. Don't call me sweetie. And for the first time all night, Isabella cracked a smile. Eels. It was a tiny little smirk that never reached her eyes, and it was the scariest damn thing anyone at the nearby tables had ever seen on a woman in a ballroom. No, she said. You're not, are you? Bet. Ryan finally found his voice, but it was way too loud. Eels. Total rookie move, because now everyone who was pretending not to listen had an excuse to stare. This is a scene, Isabella. You're embarrassing yourself and me in front of... Do you have any idea who's in this room? Eels. Do you get what you're? I know exactly who is in this room, Ryan. I picked it. You picked it? I had another place booked back in October, the Pierre. But I switched it when I heard you'd be bringing the Hartwell account here. Eels. She gave a one-shouldered shrug, her silk dress moving like liquid. I wanted a crowd with a good memory. You're nuts. I'm meticulous. You can't just Isabella, whatever you think you know, whatever slick lawyer you hired. Pritchard Hayes. Eels. Ryan literally stopped breathing for a beat. Pritchard Hayes was the same firm he used for his second divorce. They dropped you as a client back in June, Isabella said, her voice casual. Probably forgot to mention it. They don't have to, feels. You weren't on a current retainer. This is. He was totally losing it. You could see him flailing. He went for the easiest target, turning to the guy in the black shirt. And you? Who the hell are you? Feels. You just waltz into a room I paid for. Feels. You stand next to her and you think you're gonna. Luca Diantis hadn't budged an inch through all of this. He just stood a step behind Isabella's shoulder, hands relaxed, face a complete blank. But now, feels. He lifted his chin a fraction and looked at Ryan like he was checking the forecast. Mr. Caldwell, what? I'm not going to touch you tonight. Oh, you're not, are you? No. A beat of silence. Tonight is all hers, that word, tonight, feels. Just hung there in the air a second too long. And in that second, every dude at the three closest tables suddenly redid the math on their Monday morning plans. Pam, it was Edmund Hose, of all people, who cracked first. Feels. He'd been at table 3 the whole time, completely frozen with his wife beside him. But somewhere in the last 90 seconds, a switch flipped in his brain, and he decided he was not going down with Ryan Caldwell's ship, Feels. He shoved his chair back and stood up. The guy was 68 and had known Isabella's dad for 31 of those years, though he'd never broadcasted that fact. Isabella. Edmund, I wasn't aware. I want that on the record. I was not aware, Feels. I know you weren't, Edmund. It's fine. He knows. He sends his regards. Edmund just nodded and sat back down. His wife, who only heard the word father and somehow understood absolutely nothing and everything at once, reached for her wine. Feels. Ryan saw all this, and a cold dread started creeping into his spine. Her father, he repeated, real slow. Her father sends his regards. Yes, Isabella confirmed. Her father's an accountant in Rye. No, her father is Michael Vale. Feels. He's a CPA. He lives in my father's name, Isabella said flatly, as Marco Varelli. Ryan's face did a thing Vanessa had never witnessed. It just went empty, not pissed, not surprised, just blank. Like a TV screen when you yank the plug. Yes, Feels. Yes, Ryan, Varelli. Yes. At 3 different tables, guys who'd been faking interest in their wives' stories just dropped the act and turned to watch the show. Isabella scanned the room one more time, slow, just like she did when she walked in. Feels. But this time the look was different, like she was taking inventory. She was clocking who was here, who would be gossiping on Monday, who would tell this story and at how many dinner parties. She turned back to Ryan. I'm not going to punch you, she said. Feels. I'm not going to dump a drink on your side piece. I'm not going to make a scene, Ryan, because I don't have to. The scene is already here. You made it. You made it a year and 8 months ago in a San Francisco hotel with a woman named Marissa Kent. Feels. Then you did it again 6 months later with Alicia Park. And again last spring with some girl whose name I didn't even bother learning because by then I'd stopped giving a damn what you called them. You built the scene, Ryan. Feels. She waved a hand, a small, classy gesture to the 400 people, pretending not to stare. Flipped on the lights. Isabella, I'm leaving now. Hold up. I want to tell you one thing before I go. He waited. Feels. The guy looked like he'd forgotten how to do anything else. I loved you, she said. Her voice was dead quiet. Vanessa had to lean forward to catch it, and she hated herself for it. I know you don't buy that, because you don't think anyone loves anyone. Feels. You think people just manage each other. But I did. For a long time, way past the point I should have quit. I hid who I was from you because I didn't want my family to be the reason you picked me. Feels. I wanted you to pick me, just me. The me that made you pasta on Sundays and read next to you and asked how your day went. She paused. You didn't pick her, Ryan. You didn't even notice she was there. Ryan's mouth hung open. No sound. So, I'm taking her back. Feels. She turned. Didn't even glance at Vanessa again. No need. Luca Diantis offered his arm. She took it. The way her hand rested on his sleeve wasn't needy or nervous. It was the hand of a woman who'd been doing this for a long time and didn't even think about it anymore. They walked out the same way she came in. It took her 22 seconds to cross that floor. Feels. And every single step echoed in a silence so thick you could hear the click of her heels. At one table, a woman let out a breath that was almost a sob. At another, a man mumbled Jesus Christ, and his wife didn't say a word. At the doors, Isabella paused. Feels. She looked over her shoulder just enough to see table 3. Ryan was still standing there. Vanessa was sinking into her chair real slow, like her legs had quit on her. Her red dress looked all wrong in the light, suddenly tacky. A costume. Feels. Isabella looked at her husband, ex-husband, former husband, the man whose name she'd carried for 7 years and wouldn't for 7 more minutes. Heels. And she didn't smile, and she didn't scowl. She just looked at him the way you look at an old couch you're leaving behind in a move because it's not worth the hassle. Then she turned, heels, and she and Luca Diantis walked right out of the Monteverde Hotel's ballroom and into the long white hall. But the second the doors shut, the room didn't erupt. That's another thing people get wrong about places like this. They don't explode. They whisper, heels. 411 people all started talking, real quiet. Not to each other, not at first, into phones under their breath, behind their hands. By 11 o'clock, the story would hit 3 major group chats, heels. By midnight, it'd be on a private email list sent to 17 major hedge fund managers. By Monday morning, Caldwell Holdings stock would open down 4.25%. By Monday afternoon, it'd be down 9%. And by Wednesday, heels, the board of Caldwell Holdings would schedule a meeting Ryan Caldwell was specifically not invited to, but all that came later. At table 3, in that first minute after the doors closed, Vanessa Cole turned to the man she'd followed here and whispered, heels. You told me she was a nobody. Ryan Caldwell didn't answer. He was just staring at the doors. He was trying to picture Isabella's face on their wedding day. Heels. Couldn't do it. He remembered the dress, remembered the church, he even remembered the cake, but he couldn't remember her face. Ryan, what? Who is Marco Varelli? Ryan turned to her, his movements slow. Vanessa, he said, get your coat. What? Get your coat. Heels. We're leaving now. Ryan, who is your coat? She got her coat. In the long white hallway outside, Isabella Varelli walked with her hand on Luca DeSantis's arm, saying nothing. The hall was 120 feet long and totally empty, heels, except for one waiter who saw them coming, ducked into an alcove, and got real busy pretending to adjust some glasses. Heels. At the elevator, Matteo was already there, holding the door open. They stepped inside. Matteo hit the button for the lobby. The doors slid shut. In the dead silence of the elevator, Luca looked down at her. You okay? She had to think about it for a second. Heels. Yeah? You sure? I'm sure. He watched her for another moment. She looked down. Her hand on his arm was trembling, just a little. She hadn't even felt it. Oh, she said. He put his hand over hers. His was warm and rock steady. It's okay. Heels, he said. It can shake. It's allowed to. She finally let out a breath she'd been holding since she left the Arlen suite an hour and 40 minutes ago. It wasn't a sob. Heels. That wasn't a laugh. Nope. That was the sound of a woman finally putting down a burden she'd been hauling for 61 straight days. Luca, yes, thank you for coming. He gave her a look, something that was almost a smile but didn't quite make it. Heels. Isabella, he said. I was coming whether you asked me or not. The elevator doors slid open to the lobby. Snow was dumping outside the massive glass doors of the Monteverde, flakes the size of quarters against the Black Park Avenue night. Heels. Matteo led the way. They fell in behind him. Back up on the 18th floor, in a room packed with every big shot in New York, Ryan Caldwell was bailing on his own party. A woman on his arm he didn't even want anymore. Heels. Walking past tables of people who would never answer his calls again. Heels. He was heading to a car that would take him home, to a penthouse where a thick cream envelope he never opened was sitting on the kitchen counter. Inside, a divorce decree dated 2 months ago with a signature that sure as hell wasn't his. See, Heels. He didn't lose his wife tonight. He'd already lost her back in August. He was just now getting the memo. The town car that was waiting by the Monteverde's side door pulled out at exactly 10:48. And Isabella Varelli. She never once looked back. Heels. She didn't have to. She knew exactly what was happening in there, the same way someone who lights a fire knows what fire does. Luca sat across from her, cool as anything, one ankle over his knee, watching her without making it obvious. Heels. Matteo was up front, partition raised. The snow was coming down even thicker now, turning Park Avenue into some old-school black and white photo. You want to go home? Luca asked. It wasn't really a question, more like he was holding a door open for her. Heels. Not yet. No, I want a drink, a real one, not that champagne crap. She let out this small, tired laugh, pressing a hand to her cheek. Her skin was burning up. Hadn't even noticed. I've been drinking Pelgro for 6 weeks straight. I'm so over Pelgro. Heels. The Carlisle is open, not somewhere empty, somewhere with nobody. Luca chewed on that for a second. Heels. Then he leaned forward, knocked once on the partition. Matteo slid the glass down. The apartment on 63rd? The back way, yes, sir. The glass slid back up. The car hooked left on 64th. Heels. crossing Madison and gliding east through the silent snow. Isabella stared at the buildings blurring past but didn't see a thing. She was doing her thing, cataloging, filing it all away now that it was over. Ryan's face when she dropped the name Varelli, heels. Vanessa's face when she mentioned it was consistent with the other three. Edmund Hose actually getting to his feet. Didn't see that coming. She'd send his wife flowers on Monday. You're working, Luca said. I'm always working, heels. You don't have to work tonight, heels. I know. He didn't press her. That was one of the first things she'd learned about him in the 4 months she'd known him. He never pushed. He just created a space and waited. And the space he made was massive, way bigger than most people's, heels, and things just naturally rushed in to fill it. The car slipped into an unmarked underground garage on 63rd. A dude in a black coat just nodded at the driver, didn't even peek inside. Another guy waved them through a steel gate. The garage was tiny, heels, just 4 cars, and none of them were flashy. Luca got out first, offering her his hand. She took it, stepping out in her platinum silk dress like she was shedding one life for a new one, and followed him to a private elevator in the back. Heels, the elevator had 0 buttons. Heels. Just a little brass panel with a single keyhole. Luca slid a key in, gave it a turn, and the elevator started its climb. How many floors? She asked, suddenly needing to break the silence. 4? Only 4? It's a small building. You own it? Yes. Heels. Of course you do. The doors opened into a foyer that led straight into a long room. Low lights, dark wood, and a fireplace that someone had clearly lit 15 minutes ago, so it would be perfect when they walked in. Heels. A housekeeper in the kitchen at the other end gave Luca a single silent nod and then vanished through a swinging door before Isabella's heels even hit the rug. Sit, Luca said. Heels. What do you want to drink? Whiskey. How? Neat, whatever's closest. He walked over to a sideboard and poured. She sank onto the long couch, kicking her shoes off. 6 hours she'd been in those things. Heels. Her feet practically sighed with relief against the rug. She tucked them under her, a move that had nothing to do with the designer dress and everything to do with being 33 years old and bone-tired. Heels. He handed her the glass and sat in the chair across from her. He had his own drink now, dark stuff in a short glass, but he wasn't drinking it. Well, Isabella said, that's done. That part anyway. There are other parts. There are always other parts. Heels. She took a huge gulp of the whiskey, letting it burn all the way down. Heels. She had planned every single detail. The dress, the earrings, the lawyer, the filing date, the venue, the exact position of the car at the side entrance. But she never let herself think about the moment after. And here it was. A couch, a whiskey, heels, and a man in a black shirt just looking at her across a fire, asking if she was okay without saying a word. He didn't recognize me. Luca just tilted his head. When I walked in, she said, for the first 3 seconds, he had no idea who I was. Heels. Isn't that funny? No, it's not funny. I don't know why I said that. She was staring into the flames now. He looked right through me like I was just another woman he hadn't managed to sleep with yet. Isabella, I'm all right. I didn't ask. Heels. You were going to. I wasn't. She looked right at him. His face was a total poker face, but his eyes were locked on her, steady, and they hadn't moved once since she sat down. You're a strange man, she said. I've been told. I mean it as a compliment. Heels. I took it as one. She laughed, that same tired sound again, and took another sip of whiskey. And for the first time since she'd walked into the Arlen 3 hours ago, something tight in her chest finally let go. She'd met Luca Dantas in September, Heels, in a room at her father's house in Westchester she hadn't set foot in for 11 years. She didn't want to go back, fought it for 3 days. Her mother called twice, Heels. Then her father called himself, which almost never happened, and used his "this isn't a request" voice. Isabella, come home. I want to see your face. Heels. So she drove up on a Sunday afternoon. She walked into that long dining room with the dark wood beams and the painting of Lake Como, and there was her father at the head of the table, her mother on his right, and on his left, some guy she'd never seen before. Heels. This man stood up the second she walked in. That was the first thing, and not in that fake polite way. He stood up like he actually noticed a woman had entered the room. Isabella, her father said. This is Luca. Luca, my daughter. She looked at her dad. Heels. He gave her that, we're not talking about this right now. Look back. Papa, sit. Heels. Cara, eat. So she sat, and she ate. Luca DeSantis barely said a word through the first course. During the second, he asked her about a small gallery she had a stake in down in Chelsea, and he asked about it like he actually knew the place. Heels. By the third course, she wasn't even pretending not to talk to him anymore. After dinner, her father walked her to the door himself. Another thing he never did, took both her hands and switched to Italian. The language he saved for stuff that mattered. Feels. He knows about your husband. He knows everything. He knew for 11 weeks before I did. He came to me. He asked my permission to help you. I gave it. Feels. She is a good man, Bella. Not soft, but good. I wouldn't have let him in my house otherwise. I know what you need, and what you don't need. I'm giving you options, not orders. You're my daughter. Feels. You always make your own decisions. He squeezed her hands hard. But don't punish yourself by going it alone. Not with this one. This one is ugly, and he is cruel, and you deserve someone at your shoulder. Feels. She drove back to the Arlen that night and didn't sleep a wink. Just sat by the window, watching the lights around the reservoir in Central Park blink on, then off, then on again. Feels. And at 4 in the morning, she pulled out her phone and typed a message to a number Luca had given her on a business card with no name on it. One line. What do you want from me, Mr. Dantas? He texted back in under 2 minutes, which blew her mind. Feels. Nothing you don't want to give. I would like to help you finish this. I would like to meet you for coffee tomorrow, somewhere public, and tell you what I can do. If the answer is no, the answer is no, and you will never hear from me again. Feels. She met him the next day. A place on Lexington with terrible coffee but great windows. He told her exactly what he could do, and she listened. Feels. She'd already hit him with 3 questions, and he took every single one without breaking a sweat, even the one about if he'd ever killed a guy, which he straight up answered, yeah, twice. Both in Palermo, both dudes who had it coming. Feels. And I'm not explaining it unless you make me. She told him not to. Not yet, anyway. That was how it all started. Now, 5 months deep in some 63rd Street apartment she'd barely ever been in, she puts her drink down, Feels. Looks at the man her father sent her, and asks, Luca, are we actually married? He just barely raises an eyebrow. Feels. You know we are. We signed papers. We did a hell of a lot more than that in a cathedral in some tiny town in Calabria with 4 witnesses. Yeah, but was it real? He goes quiet for a minute, just turning his glass. Isabella, the paperwork is real. Feels. The cathedral is real. So are the witnesses. But if you're asking about that other way, that's a question only you can answer, not me. That's a politician's answer. Nah. A politician makes it sound like yes and no. That was just the truth. Feels. She looks right at him. Do you love me? The question just slipped out, and suddenly she felt completely exposed, almost yanking the words back. But she didn't. He didn't look away. Feels. I don't know yet, he said. What I do know is I came to this country for you without a second thought. I know I haven't been able to think straight about any other woman since September. I know when you walked into that ballroom tonight. Feels. I literally had to remind myself how to breathe. If all that adds up to love the way you mean it, I can't say tonight. Maybe be in 6 months, maybe in a year. But I can tell you this, I'm not going anywhere while you figure it out. Feels. She just stared at him for a long time. Then she grabbed her whiskey, slammed it back, and stood up, barefoot in her silk dress. She walked right around the table, sat on the arm of his chair, put a hand on his neck, but didn't kiss him. Not yet. Feels. She just pressed her forehead against his temple and closed her eyes. Okay, she whispered. Okay, he said back, and they just stayed there like that, while snow fell outside the massive windows of the apartment on 63rd Street. Meanwhile, Feels. 40 blocks south, at the corner of 58th and Park, the valet at the Monteverde Hotel was trying to explain to some seriously pissed off dude in a tux why his car was going to be another 11 minutes. Feels. Ryan Caldwell was fuming under the hotel canopy in 18-degree weather, jacket unbuttoned, his breath puffing out in angry clouds. He wasn't feeling the cold at all. Vanessa stood beside him in her red dress and fur, arms crossed, shivering. Feels. She wasn't talking, because every time she'd tried in the last 9 minutes, he'd told her to shut the hell up. Vanessa, I'm thinking. Feels. Your car is 11 minutes out, Mr. Caldwell, the valet said for the 3rd time. You said 7 minutes 4 minutes ago. Yes, sir, the garage. There's a jam on Park with the snow. I'm sorry, sir. Ryan didn't even answer. He was just staring at his phone. Feels. He'd unlocked it 9 times in 4 minutes. Opened the email app, closed it, opened it again. He started a text to a guy named Greg Moulton, typing, Greg, I need to talk to you tonight. Then he deleted it. Why? Feels. Because he'd literally just seen Greg Moulton walk right past him in the lobby 20 minutes ago, get a taxi, and totally avoid eye contact. Feels. Greg Moulton was the best man at his first wedding. Ryan, shut up, Vanessa. Ryan, I'm freezing. Then go inside. I can't go back in there, are you? Then stand there and shut up. She just stared at the side of his face, but he wouldn't look at her. Feels. A second later, her eyes welled up, and she angrily wiped her cheek with the back of her hand, smearing her red lipstick. For the first time all night, she looked like what she was, a 26-year-old girl from Ohio who'd made some really, really bad bets. Feels. You told me, she said, her voice cracking. You told me she was no one, a housewife. You told me her father was just some accountant. He is an accountant. She said his name. I heard what she said to you, Vanessa. Then who is she, Ryan? Feels. Who have I been with? Ryan finally turned and looked at her. Feels. Under the canopy's harsh white light, his face looked completely different. His mouth was small, his eyes were small. He looked, Vanessa realized, with a creeping horror, like a man a dozen years older than the guy she thought she knew. Feels. I have no idea who she is, he said. I was married to her for 7 years, and I have absolutely no idea who she is. The car finally pulled up. He jumped in without holding the door for her. She had to open it herself. Feels. Her bare hands fumbling with the handle before she slid in next to him, in a mess of red silk and fur. The driver pulled into traffic. They didn't say a word for 31 blocks. Feels. When the car stopped in front of his building on Central Park West, Ryan didn't move. Baby, Vanessa said, her voice shaky. She'd been trying out different tones for the last 20 minutes, trying to find one that would get through to him. You want me to... Feels. You want me to come up? Go home. Vanessa, what? Go home. Tell the driver your address. He'll take you. Ryan, don't do this. Not tonight. Not. Vanessa. He slowly turned his head. His eyes were completely empty. No cruelty, no love, nothing. Feels. Go home. She stared at him for a solid second. Then her face just shut down, and she said in a voice that was nothing like the one she'd been using for the past year and a half. Feels. You piece of Ryan. I know. He got out, shut the door, and the car pulled away with Vanessa Cole still sitting in the back, a wreck in her red dress and smeared lipstick. Feels. Ryan walked into his building's lobby and didn't even look back. The doorman, a guy named Hector who'd worked there for 22 years. A guy who'd seen Ryan come home drunk, angry, happy, feels, and with 3 different women, took one look at his face and knew better than to say good evening. Upstairs in the penthouse, Ryan dropped his keys in the bowl and just stood there in the entryway, coat still on. Feels. The apartment was dark except for one lamp on a timer in the living room. It was also, he slowly registered, clean. It hadn't been clean 2 days ago. It hadn't been clean in weeks. Feels. He'd fired the housekeeper back in October over nothing and just never hired a new one. Isabella always handled that stuff. He'd meant to, but never did. The whole place had been getting grimy. Feels. There'd been a dust ring on the coffee table he'd been using as a coaster. The ring was gone. The table in the entryway was polished. The rug was vacuumed. And the air smelled faintly of lemon and something else. Something that smelled like her. Feels. And right there on the long glass dining table sat a thick cream-colored envelope. He walked toward it. He already knew exactly what was inside. He knew because some tiny feels. Dark part of him had known the second she'd said November 14th in that ballroom. He knew it even more when she'd said Pritchard Hayes, and he knew it for damn sure when she dropped the name Varelli. Feels. The entire 39-block car ride had just been his brain scrambling to deny what was obviously happening. He sat down at the table, took off his coat. He set it on the back of the chair like a guy who doesn't go to many parties. He opened the envelope. Feels. There were 3 things inside. Feels. First up, the divorce decree. Finalized in New York County on November 14th of last year. Uncontested. Signed by some judge named Ellison. His name was on it. Her name was on it. His signature wasn't, because he never signed a thing. Feels. But that was fine, the decree said, because he'd been properly served and never responded within the required 90 days. It had a date stamp, a raised seal. It was, in the most boring and legally absolute way, real. Feels. The second thing was a letter on Pritchard Hayes, LLP letterhead. It was addressed to him, Ryan P. Caldwell, Esquire, 1 paragraph. It said that as of the date on the decree, the firm now represented, Feels, Isabella Varelli in all things related to the end of their marriage, and all future mail should be sent to a Ms. Helena Brandt, counsel of record. It had a phone number and an email. Feels. It was signed by some woman he'd met once at a Christmas party in 2019 and told a joke to that she definitely did not laugh at. The third thing was a handwritten note. Cream paper, black ink. Her handwriting. Feels. He knew that handwriting from 7 years of birthday cards. Ryan, the apartment is in my name. It always was. My father bought it in 2017 as a wedding gift and put it in a trust you were never a part of. Feels. You've got till the end of February to get your stuff out. After that, we're moving it for you, putting it in storage, and you're getting the bill. That Audi? It's in your name. The East Hampton house is yours. So is the boat. Bro, Feels. Everything in your name is yours now. You'll see I didn't touch a single thing that wasn't already mine. And no, I didn't steal the pictures. They're still in the guest bathroom drawer where I left them back in August. Do whatever you want with them. Feels. Don't call me. Ryan read the note. Then he read it again. He dropped it on the glass table and just stared at the wall for what felt like forever. Feels. On that wall was some painting he snagged at an auction in 2018 because his designer swore it would be a good investment. Feels. He had no clue who the artist was, couldn't remember what he paid, had zero idea what the painting was even supposed to be of. But looking at it now, he finally saw it for what it was. Feels. A ridiculously expensive piece of wallpaper he bought to make some woman he barely even liked think he was a man with taste. He stood up. He marched to the guest bathroom on the other side of the apartment, yanked open the drawer under the sink. Feels. And boom, there's the envelope she mentioned. Plain manila, no writing. He carried it back to the dining table and sat down. He ripped it open. The photos were 8x10s. Feels. And there were 43 of them. 43. Turns out they were taken over 16 months by 3 different private investigators. The quality, crystal clear, perfectly lit. They showed him with Vanessa. They showed him with Marissa Kent. Feels. They showed him with Alicia Park. And even with that one girl Isabella refused to learn the name of Sophie. That was it. The one right on top was him kissing Vanessa in her doorway on West 72nd on a Tuesday morning last March. Feels. He just sat there, staring at the pile of evidence for maybe 10-15 minutes. Didn't touch them. Didn't hide them. He just looked at the stack and waited for some kind of feeling to hit. Feels. But he didn't feel guilty. And that's the part that finally made him shut his eyes. This dude just wasn't built for guilt. He'd tried to feel it a couple of times just to see what it was like, but it never stuck. Feels. His whole life felt more like a movie he was watching than something he was actually living. What he felt right then was something else entirely. It was the feeling of getting absolutely wrecked in a fight he never even knew was happening. Feels. He pushed himself up from the table. He walked through his own apartment, which, surprise, was never really his apartment, and headed for the bedroom. Feels. The bedroom was this massive square room on the south side of the penthouse, killer view of the park, and the bed was perfectly made. He couldn't remember the last time he walked in here and saw the bed made unless he'd paid someone to do it. Feels. And there was something on the pillow. He got closer. It was her wedding ring. She left it dead center on his pillow, sitting on a cream silk pillowcase she'd bought in Florence back in 2019. Feels. The ring was a platinum band with a 4-carat diamond. He barely paid a dime for it. Her father paid for it. And it was just dawning on him that her dad probably paid for almost everything he thought he'd bought himself. Feels. He picked up the ring, ice cold. He held it between his thumb and index finger, turning it in the lamplight. He tried to remember putting it on her finger. He could remember the church, the priest, the music, but her face? Blank. And then out of nowhere it hit him. He could see her face at 26 years old, looking up at him at the altar, veil already pushed back, her eyes wet. Not sad, but like she couldn't believe her luck. And she actually mouthed the words to him. She mouthed, "I can't believe it's you." Feels. He sat down hard on the edge of the bed in his stupid rented tux and polished shoes, wearing his grandfather's gold watch. He buried his face in his hands. And for the first time in God knows how long, Ryan Caldwell made a noise that wasn't calculated. Feels. The guy was 41 years old, CEO of a company with a $1.4 billion market cap. He had 29 suits in a closet 10 feet away, and he was sobbing into his hands in an apartment that wasn't his, on a bed that wasn't his, Feels, over a wife who was never really his. He would have given every single dollar, every share of his company, just to go back to the kitchen 2 months ago and say, "Yeah, Izzy, right now. Let's talk." Feels. But you don't get to go back to that kitchen. Nobody does. Meanwhile, 40 blocks north, Isabella was passed out on a couch. She didn't mean to. The plan was to drink some whiskey, talk to this guy Luca, Feels, and then have Matteo drive her back to the Arlen Hotel. But somewhere around midnight, her head ended up on Luca's shoulder. Around 12:20, her eyes closed, and after that her breathing slowed down. Luca didn't move a muscle, Feels. He just sat there with her leaning against him, his own drink forgotten, watching the fire die down, terrified of waking her. At 12:40, the housekeeper snuck back in, placed a folded cashmere blanket on the arm of the couch without a word, heels, and vanished. Heels. He draped the blanket over her. She didn't stir. Her face, resting against his shoulder, was completely blank for the first time since he'd met her. No schemes, no strategy, no holding her breath. She looked 22. Her phone buzzed on the table. Heels. He reached for it super carefully, just trying to silence it, but he saw the name on the screen before he could look away. Papa. He stared at the name for a second. Then he did something he never does. He picked up someone else's phone. Don Marco. Heels. A beat of silence on the other end. Luca, she's asleep. Good. How is she? She's fine. She did it exactly like she said she would. I never doubted it. She's going to be wiped tomorrow. Tell her to stay in the city. Heels. Tell her not to drive up till Wednesday. Her mother's coming down Monday with soup. I'll tell her. Another pause. Don Marco Varley was 69 years old and had a voice like a busted cello. He used that voice very precisely. Heels. Like old guys who are used to being obeyed always do. Luca. Yes, Don Marco. You didn't have to call me after. I didn't expect it. I didn't call you. You called her. The result is the same. Yes, you stood behind her tonight. Heels. One step to the left. Good, stay there. I will. Yes, if he comes near her, Luca's eyes flickered down to the top of Isabella's head on his shoulder, and his whole face went completely still. He will not, Don Marco. Heels. If he comes near her, Luca, then I will handle it. Quietly. Buona notte. Buona notte. The line went dead. Luca put the phone back on the table, face down. Heels. He pulled the blanket up a little higher on Isabella's shoulder and stayed right where he was. In a cab on the West Side Away, Vanessa Cole was glued to her phone. The orange streetlights flashed across her face. Heels. Her fur coat was slipping off her shoulder, and she'd given up on her lipstick. She was doom-scrolling. The first group chat had blown up at 11:04. 4 people. One was this woman, Tisha, from the auction house, where Vanessa had a part-time gig. Heels. And Tisha had typed with the energy of someone who had been waiting years for this moment. Girl, you need to see this. Tisha sent screenshots. Heels. They were from a private Twitter account with 48,000 followers that dished on high society New York drama. The account had dropped 3 bombs in the last 40 minutes. The first one, Heels. Did Ryan Caldwell's wife just walk into the Hartwell Gala on the arm of Luca DeSantis? The second one, confirming from 2 sources on the ground at the Monteverde tonight, decree was filed in August. Divorce was finalized in November. Heels. He did not know. He is apparently still at the gala. Heels. Unbelievable. The third one said, everyone's asking, and yes, she is that Varley. Her father is Marco Varley of the Westchester Varlis. I am not making this up. The quiet wife was a Varley the whole time. Send help, my jaw's on the floor. Heels. Under that third tweet were 711 replies, and the number was climbing by the second. Most of them were just some version of, oh my God. A few were like, good for her. One, from an account with 50,000 followers of its own, Heels, just said Rip Caldwell Holdings Monday morning, but none of them said a damn thing about Vanessa. She scrolled and scrolled, waiting for her own name to pop up, dreading it and desperately needing it at the exact same time. Heels. And check this out, her name was nowhere, not once, not in any of the replies, not in a single tweet. She was in that ballroom for nearly an hour. She'd been on Ryan Caldwell's arm for 11 months. Heels. Snapped by 3 paparazzi on the way in and at least 2 on the way out. But in the story blowing up about tonight, the story that was going to own the entire weekend, she was a nobody, a footnote. Best she got was the woman in the red dress, Heels. And that was from 1 tweet with only 16 likes. She wasn't replaced, she was deleted. The cab pulled up to her building on West 72nd, and for a long second, she just sat there, completely frozen. The driver, a patient guy, waited. Ma'am, yeah. Heels. We're here. Heels. Right, I know. She climbs out, walks up the steps. Her doorman, Tomas, this super young kid who's only been on the job for 2 months and usually gives her this big nervous hello, just takes one look at her face and says absolutely nothing. In the elevator, Heels, she catches her own reflection in the brass panel. The red dress, the smeared lipstick, the mascara that had run dried and then run all over again. She looked, she realized. Heels. Exactly like a woman who got thrown out of a party, which is basically what just happened. She gets to her place, a 1-bedroom on the 9th floor that Ryan had been footing the bill for since April. Heels. And that, she suddenly understood with ice-cold certainty, was going to stop being paid for on the 1st of the month. She slammed the door shut, kicked off the red shoes, marched into the kitchen, and opened the freezer. Eels. She grabs a bottle of vodka Ryan left there 4 months ago and doesn't even bother looking for a glass. Her phone is still buzzing in her hand. A text from Tisha. Babe, are you okay? She ignores it. It buzzes again. A random number. Eels. One she doesn't have saved. The message says, Hey Vanessa, this is Mallory Chen from page 6. Are you free to talk tonight? We're running a story tomorrow and want to make sure we get your side. She just stared at the screen. Eels. 3 months ago, shoot. 3 weeks ago. A text from page 6 would have been the moment she'd been waiting for her whole life. It was the door she came to New York to kick down. She looked at the message. She looked at the vodka. Eels. She looked at her reflection in the dark window over the sink. She put the phone face down on the counter, took a long pull from the bottle, and she did not text Mallory Chen back. The snow had quit sometime after 1 in the morning, and by 2, Eels. The city was dead silent in that way New York only is a few hours a year, with a silence that just crushes everything. Eels. In an apartment over on 63rd Street, Luca DeSantis carried Isabella, who was passed out and wrapped in cashmere, from the couch to the bedroom. He laid her down right on top of the covers without even undressing her. Eels. Then took off her earrings himself and put them on the nightstand. She mumbled something in her sleep, some Italian word that sounded like something her mother once said. He pulled the blanket over her, watched her for one long moment. Eels. Then he left the room, quietly closed the door, and walked down the long hall to his study, where he sat down at a desk, flipped on a green lamp, opened a laptop, and began calmly, without any rush, to make a list. Eels. The list was simple. 3 columns. First column was a list of names. Second column was what he was going to make those people do. Third column was the deadline. At the very top of the first column, he typed in clean block letters, Caldwell Holdings Board, Eels. Then he got to work. Meanwhile, downtown, in a penthouse, Ryan Caldwell was still perched on the edge of a bed that wasn't his, holding a ring that wasn't his, and looking at photos that were his, but that he desperately wished weren't. Eels. The crying had stopped. The thinking hadn't started. That was coming tomorrow and the day after, and every Monday in a boardroom that was about to vote him out as the face of the brand. Eels. But tonight he just sat there on the edge of the bed as the snow stopped falling outside, in an apartment that was finally clean, with the only sound being the low hum of the heat. And he held his dead marriage in his right hand, this small silver, Eels, and final thing, and he just wouldn't put it down. That hum from the heating vents was still the only noise in the penthouse when the sky over Central Park began to turn gray, and Ryan Caldwell hadn't budged from that spot in almost 4 hours. Eels. The ring was still in his hand. His hand had gone numb around 4 in the morning, but he kept holding on because putting it down felt like doing something, and he wasn't ready to do anything yet. Eels. At 6:11, his phone went off on the nightstand. He let it buzz. It stopped. It buzzed again. It stopped. Third time it buzzed, he grabbed it, because 3 calls in a row at 6 a.m. on a Sunday is not a social call. It was Bill Ostracki, Eels, the chief counsel for Caldwell Holdings. He'd been there for 11 years. He was 63, lived in Greenwich, didn't drink, and had never, not once in 11 years, called Ryan Caldwell before 9 in the morning. Ryan, are you somewhere private? Eels. I'm in my bedroom, Bill. It's 6 in the morning. I need you to listen to me. I'm listening. In about 45 minutes, the Wall Street Journal is going to post a story about last night. Ryan squeezed his eyes shut. Eels. They hit me up at 5. They called Greg Moulton at 4:30. They called your press agent at 4. The press agent woke me up at 4:15. I've been on the phone ever since. What does the story say? The story says exactly what happened last night. Eels. Which version? The true one. Ryan, there's only one version. You took a woman to the Hartwell. Your ex-wife walked in on the arm of another man. She revealed your marriage has been legally over since November. And she revealed her father is Marco Varelli, Eels. And then she left. That's the story. The Journal has 3 confirmed sources from inside the room and 2 from the courthouse. Eels. The decree is public record. They pulled it. Bill, yes. How is this a Wall Street Journal story? There was a pause. Not a long one, but it was the kind of pause a lawyer makes when he's picking which truth to tell. And Ryan did not like the sound of it. Eels. Ryan, you're the CEO of a publicly traded company worth over $1 billion. You made a complete ass of yourself in front of 400 of your biggest shareholders last night. Your stock is going to crater at least 6 points on Monday. Eels. Your board chair called me at 5:20 and asked if you should even be on tomorrow's earnings call. Feels. Estraki, what did you say? I said, no, Bill. Ryan, listen. I'm not calling as your friend. I'm calling as your counsel. You will not go to the office tomorrow. You will not be on the call. You will not talk to anybody. Not the press, not the board. Feels. Not your team, not even your mother until you and I sit down tomorrow with Harriet Lowen. Harriet Lowen. She's a crisis PR person. She works with our firm. She's good. Feels. She's crazy expensive and she is very good and she has 15 minutes for you at 2 on Monday. We are taking the 15 minutes, Bill. I don't need a Ryan. What? Your ex-wife is Marco Varelli's daughter. I heard her, Bill. Do you get what that means? Feels. I get that my divorce is more complicated than... No, Ryan, no. Listen to me. Feels. Listen very carefully. Your divorce is the easiest problem you have right now. I'm telling you this because I've known you for 11 years. And I'm telling you what I'd tell my own kid. Your divorce is already done. The papers are clean. Feels. She took nothing that wasn't hers. That is a finished problem. The divorce is over. Then what? The problem, Ryan, is that for 4 months, maybe longer, a man named Luca DeSantis has been in this country. A man who, until September, Feels, spent all his time in Palermo and Zurich. And the reason he came to this country is sitting in an apartment somewhere in New York right now. Feels. And that apartment is not yours. And she is not calling you. And her father has not called you. And his lawyer has not called me. Do you understand what that means, Bill? I don't. It means they don't need to. It means whatever they wanted from you, Feels, they have already taken. The divorce was them being polite. The line went dead quiet for a second, Ryan. Yeah, stay in your apartment today. Do not answer the door. Do not answer the phone unless it's me. I'll be at your place at 1, Feels. Harriet will be there at 2. Do not go on social media. Do not call Vanessa Cole. Do not, under any circumstances, call Isabella. Feels. You call Isabella, and I'm out of this firm by noon. I'm not doing it, Bill. Say the words. I'm not calling her. Perfect. 1 a.m. I'll grab breakfast sandwiches. Try to get some sleep. The phone clicked off. For a solid minute, Ryan just sat there, Feels. Phone in his left hand, ring in his right. Then, super slowly, he leaned over and placed the ring on the nightstand. The second it was gone, his hand started shaking, like he'd just dropped something way heavier than a tiny piece of metal. Sleep? Feels. Not happening. He just lay on the bed, still in his tux pants and undershirt, watching the ceiling shift from gray to a lighter gray and then almost white. Feels. And one thought kept looping in his head. That morning back in August, some woman, Rosa Delgado, showed up at his office, handed him an envelope. He signed for it without even looking at her, busy on a call with Sol. He tried to picture her face now. Feels. Nothing. He tried to remember how heavy the envelope was. All he could recall was it felt thicker than a letter but thinner than a box. He just tossed it in a desk drawer, went to his meeting, and completely forgot about it until last night. Feels. And in those 5 months, his entire world had been secretly rewired under his feet, like a magician pulling a tablecloth out from under a feast. Only now all the glasses were shattering. Feels. He finally dragged himself up at 7, took a shower so hot it stung. He threw on sweats, went to the kitchen, stared into the open fridge for a full minute, and then shut it without grabbing anything. He just made coffee. Feels. He sat at his huge glass dining table, that cream-colored envelope still gaping open in front of him, the stack of 43 photos sitting right there. He downed 3 cups of coffee without looking at a single picture. At 7:50, Feels, the news story dropped. He didn't need to read it. His phone started vibrating off the hook. The sound was off, but the screen kept lighting up again and again. A text from his mom. Another one. A text from his sister, Feels. Even a text from his sister's husband, who literally never texted him. Feels. A call from a random number, had to be a reporter. A call from Greg Moulton that he let go straight to voicemail. At 8:10, he finally flipped the phone over, not to check the flood of messages, but to shut the whole thing down. But before he could, Feels, he saw the headline on the lock screen from the news app. Caldwell Holdings CEO, ex-wife, and a Varelli. A New York story. He powered it off. Just sat there in the dead silent apartment, sipping cold coffee. And for the first time in like a decade, Feels, he thought about a girl from a Christmas party back in 2018. A girl who laughed at something he'd said with her entire face, then put a hand on his arm and whispered, "I don't usually talk to men like you, Feels." He'd asked, "What kind of man am I?" And she'd said, "The kind my father warned me about." He thought she was kidding. For 2 years, he told that story at dinner parties. The father joke. That's how he met his wife. It always got a laugh. Feels. Nobody was laughing anymore. At 12:40 in the afternoon, across town on 63rd Street, Isabella Varley's eyes fluttered open in a bed she had no memory of falling into. She blinked at the ceiling. Not her ceiling, Eels. It took her a second to place the pressed tin, painted a soft white, with a single antique brass light fixture. The light filtering in was gray and soft, coming through heavy linen curtains that were drawn but not quite closed. Eels. She could hear distant traffic, a faint church bell maybe 10 blocks off, and underneath it all, the quiet hum of an apartment where someone was up but being careful not to make noise. She sat up. She was still wearing the platinum dress. Eels. Her earrings were gone, though. Both pairs of cut diamonds were sitting on the nightstand, placed on a little square of black velvet, which means somebody actually went out of their way to find a square of black velvet. Eels. She swung her legs over the side of the bed, bare feet. Her back had that dull ache you get from sleeping in fancy clothes. A robe was folded on a chair. It was long, heavy, and cream-colored. Not hers, too crisp and new to belong to anyone yet. Eels. She slipped it on over the dress, tied the sash, and padded barefoot out of the bedroom. The hallway was long and silent. Eels. And it smelled like coffee. She followed the scent. Luca was at the far end of the apartment, in the kitchen, leaning against a counter and reading a tablet. He was just in a black t-shirt and dark jeans, no shoes, his hair still damp. He glanced up as she walked in. Eels. His face did that tiny little twitch that was his version of a smile. "Good afternoon," he said. "What time is it?" 12:42. Jesus, you needed it. "I slept in my dress. You did, in your bed." "In a bed," he corrected. "Not mine. Guest bed." Eels. "I was on the couch." She stopped dead in the kitchen. "You were not. I was. Luca, you're a grown man." A grown man who didn't want to make an assumption. She just stared at him for a beat. Eels. She had no idea what to do with her face. She was exhausted, 33 years old, and had torched her old life in front of 400 people last night. Now she was barefoot in a near stranger's apartment, Eels, wearing a brand new robe that was obviously bought for her, while a man who could have any assumption he wanted was making her coffee and sleeping on his own couch to be a gentleman. So she walked right up to him, planted her hand flat on his chest. Eels. Stood on her toes, he was only a few inches taller, and kissed him right on the mouth. It wasn't long, it wasn't dramatic. It was a kiss that basically said, "Message received, thank you, and you can stop that now if you want." Eels, all in one shot. When she pulled back, his expression had shifted, just a little. A faint flush was rising on his cheekbones. "Noted," he said. "I thought so." "Coffee, please." He poured a cup for her. Didn't even ask how she took it. Eels, because of course he already knew. 1 sugar, no milk. He slid it across the counter. She hopped onto a stool, wrapping her hands around the warm mug. "The Journal ran the story at 7:50 this morning," Luca said. "I know." "You know?" Eels. "Helena texted me at 8. I saw it and went back to sleep." "Your father called last night. When?" "Around midnight. You were out," I answered. "You answered my phone?" Eels. "I silenced it, but I saw his name. I knew he wasn't going to quit. What did he say?" "He said to stay in the city until Wednesday." "Your mother is coming down on Monday with soup." Isabella actually laughed. It just burst out of her, surprising them both. "Soup?" Eels. "Soup. My mother thinks soup can fix anything. Can it fix most things? Is this one of them?" Luca actually thought about it, like he was weighing the pros and cons. "No," he said finally. "But it won't hurt." She took a sip of coffee. It was really good. Eels. She'd have to ask him where he gets it. "Luca?" "Yes." "What did you do last night, after I passed out?" "Yes." He gave her a look. Eels. Then he just turned the tablet around and slid it over to her. The screen was a hit list, 3 columns, names, actions, dates. She read the whole thing, top to bottom, as hot coffee went cold. The first name was Peter Halbrook, Eels, the chairman of the board at Caldwell Holdings. The action next to his name, a single word, call. The date, Sunday. The second name was the top partner at the hedge fund with the biggest stake in Caldwell stock. Action, lunch. Date, Monday. Eels. Third was the CEO of a major supplier for Caldwell Holdings. Eels. The action was dinner. The date was Tuesday. 14 names. 14 takedowns. Isabella read every single one. Some of them she read twice. When she was done, she put the tablet down and just looked at Luca. "This is a lot," she said. Eels, her voice low. "This is what you asked for." "I asked for a divorce, Luca. You asked for a divorce. And in my kitchen in Zurich back in October, you asked for the company to pay for it." Eels. "You said, and I remember this word for word, I want him to wake up one morning and find out the building has been sold without him." "I took the note." "You took the note." "I took the note, Luca." "Yes." Eels. I don't want to ruin his life. He just tilted his head, not arguing, just waiting. I don't, she insisted. I thought I did. For a really long time I did. But last night, in that ballroom, when I saw his face, when I saw what happened to it, Eels, I realized I stopped wanting to ruin him ages ago. I just wanted him to know. I wanted him to know that I saw everything, and he knows now. She let out a long breath. And that's actually enough for me. Isabella, I know what you're going to say, Eels. Tell me. You're going to say that what I want and what's about to happen are two totally different things. You're going to say the story is already out there. The board is already panicking, Eels. And the stock market is going to do what it's going to do on Monday morning, whether I make these calls or not. Eels. You're just going to tell me you're not in charge of that. I knew you'd say it. But listen, she said, and that word, us just dropped on the counter between them like a lead weight. I don't want us to be the ones pulling that trigger, Eels. I'm not putting my hand on the knife. For a long moment, Luca said nothing. Fine, he finally caved. All right, fine. I won't make those calls, but I am making two of them. The two that deal with your safety and your mom's place in Rye. And on that, Eels, not budging 1 inch. The other 12 names, they're off the list. Eels, the market gets what the market wants. Thank you. You don't need to thank me. Yeah, I really do, he looked right at her. For the first time, she saw a crack in his ice-cold mask. It wasn't much. Just a slight loosening around his eyes, Eels. A tension he'd held for so long she didn't even notice it was there until it was gone. You are one surprising woman, Isabella. How am I surprising? I figured you'd want him set on fire. I did, for a bit. Turns out, wanting to burn someone alive is exhausting, Eels. Turns out I already used up all my fire just getting myself out. That's not a line. I just made it up. Well, it's a damn good thing you just made up then, Eels. She laughed again, and this time it came out easier. Then the apartment doorbell buzzed, a soft, classy little chime. Luca glanced at the monitor on the wall, gave a single nod, and hit a button. A second later, Eels. Matteo walked into the kitchen holding a shopping bag and an envelope. Theora, Matteo, your things from the Ireland, also an envelope from your lawyer. She said it's time-sensitive, but not an emergency. Thanks. Also, Matteo paused for a single second, Eels, which for him was basically an eternity. There are 2 reporters on 62nd and another 2 over on Lexington. They aren't here for us. Eels. They have no idea about this address, but they're within 3 blocks. How'd they even get that close? They tailed us from the Ireland. They were watching the hotel last night. We slipped out the catering entrance at 11:40, just like we planned, Eels. They weren't on our tail then. My guess? They went looking for your father's car this morning, didn't find it, and now they're just guessing. Are we safe here? Yes. This address isn't in any public records under your name or the Don's, or Luca's, Eels. The building's owned by a Delaware LLC, which is managed by a trust in Liechtenstein. It is not in Mr. Dantis's name. Of course it's not. For a split second, Matteo almost smiled. A true rarity. I'll be downstairs, he said. Call if you need anything. Eels. He was gone. Isabella stared at the envelope from Helena Brandt and tore it open. Inside was 1 sheet of paper. In Helena's own handwriting, with a black fountain pen, it said, Belle Caldwell's lawyer called me at 9:10 this morning, Eels. He wants to set a meeting for Monday afternoon. He doesn't want to sue. He doesn't want anything. He wants to, quote, confirm there are no further surprises. I told him there's no meeting because there's nothing to meet about. It's over, Eels. He asked if you'd accept a letter. I said that completely depends on the letter. He said he'd send one. If Caldwell sends a letter, I'll pass it along. You don't have to read it, Eels. You don't have to reply. If you decide you want to, I'll advise you first. That Vanity Fair request for an interview is now up to $50,000 for your time, donated to a charity of your choice. I still say you should turn it down. Let me know, Eels. I'll be in the office by 8 tomorrow. Isabella read it twice. She folded it, placing it on the counter. What's it say? Luca asked. His lawyer wants to send me a letter. You gonna read it? Don't know yet. That's honest. I'm trying it out, Eels. She slid off the stool. She just stood there in the robe, coffee in hand. Through the window, 8 floors down, she saw a piece of 63rd Street. A yellow cab crawling through the slush, a guy walking a big gray dog, Eels, and the long morning shadows that meant noon had already come and gone. Eels. Luca. Yes, I'm going to my mother's tomorrow. I thought you were staying here till Wednesday. I changed my mind. I need to see her. She's going to make soup no matter what, Eels. And I'd rather eat it in her kitchen than have Matteo chauffeur it down I-95 in Tupperware. All right, come with me. He just stared at her.
To your mother's?
Yes, on a Monday, yes. Isabella, I know what I'm asking. I don't think you do. Feels. My father is going to be there. I know your father will be there. Bring your own car. He actually smiled then, a real one. It was a tiny, surprising thing gone in a flash, but it happened. All right then. Good. Feels. So while Isabella was downing her second coffee on 63rd Street, Vanessa Cole was on the floor of her one-bedroom on West 72nd, wearing a sweatshirt and nothing else, glued to her phone. No sleep. Feels. She'd chugged a quarter of a vodka bottle before stopping, not wanting to be hungover for whatever fresh hell today would bring. Then she just laid on the couch in that red dress for an hour. Feels. Then she ripped the dress off and shoved it to the bottom of a laundry basket like it was evidence in a crime. Then she threw on the sweatshirt, sat on the floor with her back to the couch, and she just scrolled. By 8 in the morning, Heels, her name was already in 2 stories. Heels. One was a page 6 hit piece that dropped at 7:45. It was short. It called her Vanessa Hall Cole, 26, a part-time gallerist and occasional model who, according to sources, was a frequent companion of the tech exec for the last year. Heels. It had a picture of her in the red dress on the red carpet at the Monteverde, smiling, her hand on Ryan's sleeve. The caption read, Cole left at the Hartwell Gala last night. Left. Because they literally cropped Ryan's face out of the picture, Heels, leaving just his shoulder and arm. They cropped her out of her own life and left her with his leftovers. The second story was a thread on a private Twitter account from last night. Heels. The thread quoted some anonymous source who claimed to be at table 3, and this rando said she had to read the sentence 3 times. The mistress looked like somebody had told her the restaurant was out of the things she ordered. Heels. The replies were absolutely savage. She had 612 new Instagram followers overnight, 31 new DMs, 1 missed call from her mom back in Cleveland, 1 text from some girl from high school that just said, OMG, is that you? OMG. Feels. But she hadn't heard from Ryan. That was the part that kept looping in her head. Not a single word from Ryan since he told her to just go home Vanessa at the curb on Central Park West. Feels. She'd texted him at 2 in the morning. She texted him at 4. She'd texted him at 6:30. She left 1 voicemail at 7:12 where she was crying, which she instantly regretted. Nothing. He hadn't replied. She wasn't an idiot. Feels. For 18 months she'd told herself she wasn't an idiot, and yeah, last night proved her wrong on some things, but not this. She knew exactly what it meant when a man stops texting back the morning after. She was done. She looked at her phone. Feels. The Page 6 reporter, Mallory Chen, had texted her twice more overnight, polite little follow-ups. She stared at the thread for a solid minute. She had a choice. Feels. She could say nothing and let the story being told about her be the only story, and that story was the mistress. Feels. And that label would stick to her forever. Or she could talk. She could tell Mallory Chen the truth, that Ryan lied to her about the divorce, that he told her Isabella was a nobody. Feels. That he promised her a whole apartment in Tribeca once the papers were signed, that he told her Isabella's dad was just some accountant. The truth wouldn't make her look good. Let's be real. Nothing was going to make her look good now. Feels. But the truth would make him look so much worse. And right now, with her head pounding and her dignity at the bottom of a laundry basket, making him look worse sounded amazing. She grabbed the phone. She started typing, got 3 sentences in, and stopped. Feels. Then she deleted them, started over, deleted them again. For another half an hour, she just sat on the floor, phone in her lap, the weak Sunday sun filtering through the window. And in the end, she just wrote back, Hi, Mallory. Not now, not ever, probably. Feels. Please take me off your list. Thanks for reaching out. She put the phone down and just stayed on the floor for who knows how long. And at some point, she realized she was crying again. But this time it was quiet. Feels. The kind of crying that makes no sound at all. She was 26 years old. She'd moved to New York 4 years ago from some Cleveland suburb with 2 suitcases and a plan. Feels. And the plan, more or less, was to become the kind of woman people wanted to take pictures of. Well, they took her picture last night. She got exactly what she wanted. It turns out getting what you want is a tiny, freezing cold room. Feels. Wiping her face on her sweatshirt sleeve, she got up. She walked to the kitchen, looked in the fridge, and saw it was almost completely empty because she hadn't bought groceries for herself in forever. Why would she? Feels. She was always at someone else's apartment for dinner. She shut the fridge. She opened her laptop on the counter, pulled up her bank account, and stared at the balance. Feels. It was way less than she expected. Turns out, when you assume your problems are about to disappear, You don't really check the price tags. She slammed the laptop shut. She grabbed her phone again and dialed her mom in Cleveland, Heels. Her mom answered on the first ring, which pretty much screamed, "I've been waiting by the phone." "Vanessa, hi mom, honey, mom, and her voice just shattered, so embarrassing. But this was the one person who knew her before she became, well, her, Heels. And man, when you're exhausted, the fake you gets tired first. "Mom, I think I need to come home for a bit," Heels. Her mother, who had already seen 2 different versions of this disaster story online and had been up all night waiting for this exact call, paused for literally 1 second. Then she said, "Vanessa, baby, when can you be on a plane?" Meanwhile, Heels. Uptown in the safe house on 63rd Street, Isabella had ditched the platinum dress. She was in her own jeans and a cream cashmere sweater from the go bag Mateo had brought over. She'd washed her face, pulled her hair back. In these clothes, Heels, she looked about a decade younger than she did in that ballroom, and about a decade more like herself. She was sitting at the counter, plowing through emails on her laptop. Heels. Helena's, her dad's bean counters, some real estate agent about a building she was quietly buying up in Brooklyn. Then her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen. Julia. Belle, you've seen the journal. I've seen it. Heels. Vanity Fair is up to 100,000. Tell Helena to keep saying no. I told Helena, she's saying no. I'm telling you because it's hilarious. It is a little funny. Your mother called me. Of course she did. She asked if you were eating. Heels. Tell her I'm eating. Are you? I had toast. Belle, I'm going to eat, Julia. I'm at a house. There's food. Chill, I'm at the Arland packing your stuff. Heels. What should I do with the wedding photos? Isabella didn't answer right away. There were 2 huge albums boxed up in the closet at the Arland. Albums she'd moved out of the penthouse back in August and hadn't touched since. Heels. She pictured the first photo in the first album, her at 26 in a white dress, looking up at a guy whose face she hadn't wanted to see in a long, long time. Burn them, she said. Juliana made a little thinking noise. Belle, no. I know. Heels. Don't burn them. Just stick them in a box. Tape it shut. Write something on it I won't want to open for 10 years. Put it in storage.
Easier. Done. Thanks, Julia. Belle.
Yeah? You did good last night. Thanks, I'm proud of you. Heels. Isabella shut her eyes for a second. Juliana had known her since she was 22. For 11 years, Juliana had been the one standing behind her with a brush in front of every important mirror. She didn't throw that word around. Thank you, she said. Heels. Quieter this time. Call me Wednesday. I will. She hung up. She just sat there at the counter, then back to the emails. At 1 in the afternoon in the Central Park West penthouse, Heels, the doorman buzzed up to say a Mr. Ostrowski was downstairs with a bag of sandwiches. Ryan Caldwell had put on khakis and a button-down because you can't take a meeting in sweats, Heels, even if it's in your own dining room and your opponent is 80 years away from being your opponent, Heels. He let Bill in. Bill was in a barber jacket and jeans, a look Ryan had never seen on him, and was holding 2 paper bags from a deli on 79th. Ryan, Bill, you look like hell. I feel like hell. Good. That's the appropriate state for today. Heels. Bill started unpacking the bags on the dining table. He slid a wrapped egg sandwich and a coffee over to Ryan and sat down. He completely ignored the envelope and the photos still sitting right there where Ryan had left them. Eat, Bill ordered. Heels. Not hungry. Eat anyway. Harriet gets here at 2. She's going to ask you hard questions and you're going to need some protein. Ryan unwrapped the sandwich. He took a bite. Heels. He didn't even realize he was starving. He took another. Bill, yeah, what's actually going to happen tomorrow? Bill leaned back, took a long gulp of his coffee, and put the cup down. Tomorrow morning at 9:30, Heels, the stock will open down somewhere between 5 and 9 points. My money's on 8. By 10:30, the board will have an emergency call. You will not be on it. By 11:30, Peter Holbrook will call me. Heels. He'll tell me the board wants you to take a leave of absence, effective immediately, to deal with what he'll call personal matters. And during your leave, Rebecca Alvaro will be acting CEO. Heels. He'll want me to get you to agree in writing by close of business Monday. Heels. He'll hint, without actually saying it, that if you don't agree, they'll move for a no-confidence vote on Tuesday. They'll have the votes. Jesus. Bill, you wanted the truth. You wanted a number, Ryan. I'm giving you a plan. Heels. Ryan put his sandwich down. So I'm out. You are going on leave. Leave is not out. Leave is a word we are going to use very, very carefully for the next 6 months. During this leave, we're going to do a few things. Heels. We're going to make a huge donation to a cause that has zero to do with any of this. We're going to get you into therapy with a name we can drop if anyone asks. And we are going to stop you from going to any events with any women for at least a year. Feels. We are going to stop you from posting anything on any platform, anywhere, for at least a year. If we do all that, and if the company does well without you, there is a version of this where in 18 months, Feels. You're back on the cover of Forbes as a comeback story. That's a version. I'm not promising it. I'm telling you a version exists. And if we don't do all that, then in 18 months, you're a cautionary tale at a business school, Feels. Selling your shares at a discount because the company asked you to. Bill, would you, in your professional judgment, ever advise me to reach out to her? Bill just stared at him across the table for a long, long time. Feels. Ryan, I know what you said at 6 this morning. I'm asking you now, after lunch, as a human being. As a human being? No. Why? Because you had 7 years to reach out to her, Ryan. Feels. I watched you at a company picnic in July introduce her to a new hire as my wife, Isabel. And her name was Isabella. And she smiled at you like she'd been smiling at you for a long time about something that wasn't funny. And I went home and told my wife, Feels. And my wife said, Bill, that marriage is already over. He just hasn't been told yet. And I said, no, Marjorie, it's not. You're reading too much into it. And it turns out she was right. Your wife was already leaving you, Ryan, in July. Feels. I've been sitting on that conversation for 6 months. Feels. I didn't say anything because it wasn't my business. It is now my business. The answer is no. Don't call her. Don't write her. Don't email her. Don't send her flowers. Don't send her a book of poetry. Feels. Don't do any of the crap you're going to want to do for the next 3 weeks when you can't sleep. There is no version where contacting her helps you. There are 16 versions where it makes things worse. Ryan just put his hands over his face. Bill? Yes, Feels. I don't know how I got here. Bill was quiet for a beat. Ryan, he said, and his voice wasn't mean. Just tired. You got here one choice at a time, same as everybody. A chime from the door, 2 o'clock. That'll be Harriet, Bill said. He stood up. Feels. He grabbed the wrapper from his own sandwich, which he'd barely touched, and crushed it neatly in his hand. Ryan, sit up. Tuck your shirt in. Try to look like a man she can work with. If she walks out of here in the next 45 minutes, Feels. You're a cautionary tale by spring. Ryan tucked in his shirt, wiped his face. He sat up straight. The doorbell rang again. He got up, walked across his own living room, his ex-wife's living room. Feels. Though he wasn't going to let that phrase sink in for a while. And he opened the door for a woman named Harriet Lohan, who was about to spend the next hour explaining to him, very politely, just how small his life was about to get. Feels. Harriet Lohan was a small woman in a big wool coat, and she did not smile when Ryan opened the door. She didn't frown either. She just looked at him the way a vet looks at a dog that just got hit by a car, assessing, measuring, Feels. Already calculating which bones could be set and which ones had to come out. Mr. Caldwell. Harriet, thank you for— Let's not do that yet. She blew past him into the apartment without an invitation, unwinding a long charcoal scarf as she walked. Feels. She handed him the scarf without looking at him. She marched right to the dining table, saw the envelope and the photograph still sitting there, and stopped cold. Feels. Bill? Yes. Did you tell him to put those away? Didn't think of it. Put those away, Mr. Caldwell, now. Not in a drawer in this room. In a drawer in a different room. I don't need to see them. Feels. And I don't want them on any surface you and I will be looking at for the next 45 minutes. Ryan scooped the pictures into a pile. He took them and the envelope into the guest room, shoved them in the nightstand, and slammed the drawer shut. Feels. When he came back, Harriet was already at the table, a leather folio open in front of her, a pen in one hand, and a phone face down on the wood. Sit, Mr. Caldwell. He sat. Feels. All right, let's get into it. She goes, you're going to answer my questions, no lies. You lie, I walk, and you can't buy me back. And his lawyer Bill is just like, yep, she's dead serious. So, first question, straight for the jugular. Who else? Feels. Besides the 3 women his ex-wife already exposed, who else has he been with in the last 4 years? She wants names, dates, and whether they'll spill to the press. Ryan just freezes, looks at his lawyer who ain't helping him. Finally, he cracks. Feels. There's one more, he mumbles. Karen Dupree, an interior designer. This was like 2.5 years ago, real brief, maybe 6 weeks. But does she still work for him? Nope. They haven't talked in 2 years. Feels. Is she going to talk to a reporter? She snaps back. He goes, I don't know, which is like the worst possible answer. She lays it out. Either you call her, or you give me the name of someone who can find out. Pick one. He stammers, I'll call her. Feels. But nope, she shuts that down immediately. You're not calling anyone for the next 6 months. Give me her number. Some pro is going to call Karen, be super polite, and it's going to cost Ryan a ton of cash. By the end, heals. Karen Dupree is going to sign something to keep her mouth shut. Is she married? He thinks she's engaged. Well, that's going to cost you even more. Fine. Anyone else? He says no. She just stares him down. Think harder. Heals. There's no one else, he insists. 5 women in 4 years, that's the whole list. Harriet, the fixer, is just scribbling away on her notepad. Super fast, ugly handwriting. Okay, question number 2. Your relationship with your ex-wife. Heals. The moment she walked into your kitchen back in August and you blew her off. Give it to me straight. No sugarcoating, no drama. Just facts. Ryan's just staring at his hands, notices some random cut on his knuckle he doesn't even remember getting. Heals. He finally admits, I hadn't slept in the same bed as her in maybe 4 months, maybe 5. Heals. He tried to tell himself it was just work stress, but he knew it was a lie. She stopped asking about my day sometime last spring, he says. She used to ask me every single day. Get this. He didn't even notice when she stopped. It hit him in like, heals. July that she hadn't asked in a while. And you know what he thought? I remember thinking good, because I didn't want to lie to her about my day. I didn't have a good lie ready. Then he just forgot about it. Harriet keeps writing, doesn't even look up. Heals. How often was she at events with you? Less and less. The last one was some founders' dinner in April. He remembers she was super quiet. Somebody asked what she did, and she just said, I write. He made a joke about her being modest. Heals, and she didn't even crack a smile. He remembers that. Heals. He remembers she didn't smile. What does she write? Ryan looks up. Completely blank. Sorry? And she repeats, slow and deadly. What does your ex-wife write, Mr. Caldwell? He opens his mouth, then closes it. Heals. You can literally see him turning red. I don't actually know. And bam, Harriet puts her pen down. She gives him this long, soul-crushing look. Not mean, just done. Heals. It was the look of a 59-year-old woman who has met way too many guys exactly like him and has zero patience left for this kind of epic cluelessness. Mr. Caldwell, your ex-wife has published 3 novels under the name Belle Marchetti. Heals. That's her mother's maiden name. Heals. And the bombshells keep dropping. The 3rd book was a finalist for the PEN/Faulkner 2 years ago. The 2nd one got optioned by a movie studio whose CEO you've literally had dinner with. All 3 got reviewed in the Times. Heals. I read the 3rd one on a flight last month. It's really good. Ryan is just sitting there, absolutely wrecked. I'm telling you this not to hurt your feelings, Harriet says, stone cold, 'cause your feelings are not my problem today. Heals. I'm telling you, because in about 4 hours a reporter is going to ask me if you knew your wife was a famous novelist, and I need to know what you want me to say. Ryan looks at her, his eyes getting all shiny, which is the last thing he wanted. Heals. Tell them I was aware, he whispers. Tell them I was very proud of her. Big mistake. Harriet shoots that down instantly. Look, if I say that, Heals, and the reporter calls 3 of her friends who all say you never read a single page, which we both know is true, then I've lied for you. My name is in the correction, and I don't do that for anyone. Not for any amount of money, Heals. So they're going to tell a different story, a true one. She turns to the lawyer. What's the angle, Bill? Bill, without a hint of emotion, says he's learning. The last 6 months have been a time of hard self-reflection. Heals. He deeply regrets not being the partner his wife deserved. Heals. No positive spin. We're not claiming he did anything right. The narrative is a man who knows he failed and isn't trying to hide it. That's the frame, Harriet says, writing it down. The frame is I failed. Not it was complicated. Not we grew apart. Heals. Not we both made mistakes. Because she didn't. He did. Those are the only words you use. And you're banned from saying them on camera for at least 3 months, because your face will give you away. Heals. But you're going to practice saying them into a mirror every morning, starting tomorrow. Heals. By April, you'll be ready for one carefully managed interview with a journalist I pick. Agreed? He agrees. For the hard part. She closes her folder. Mr. Caldwell, you get it, right? Your ex-wife is not going to bail you out. He says he understands. Heals. No, I mean you really get it. I've had clients who get it in their heads, then 3 weeks later they're calling their ex begging for a joint statement to clear the air, and they get laughed at. Your ex-wife will not take your call. Heals. Her lawyer won't take my call about anything other than the divorce. Heals. Your ex-wife has made up her mind, she continues. You are finished business. You're not a problem she needs to handle. You are a box packed, labeled, and sitting in a storage unit she will never, ever visit again. You get what I'm saying? He gets it. Good. Feels. Because what I'm about to ask you to do, you are not going to like it. She taps her pen on the folder. You are going to write her a letter. Ryan sputters. You just said don't contact her. Harriet just smirks. I didn't say that. Bill said that. Feels. Bill's your lawyer. He's doing his job. I'm your PR counsel, and I'm doing mine. Feels. Our jobs are going to clash twice today. This is the first time. You're going to write her a letter, Harriet repeats. Handwritten. 1 page, not 2, not 3. 1. It will say 3 things. I was wrong. I am sorry. I will not contact you again. That's it. No buts, no howevers. No asking, offering anything, or explaining anything. Just 3 sentences. You're going to put it in an envelope, address it to her attorney, and give it to Bill to deliver. Feels. Her lawyer, Elena Brandt, will open it and decide if it even gets to his ex-wife. Your ex-wife probably won't even read it. That's fine. Oh, this is good. The point of the letter isn't for her to read it. The point is for it to exist. So in 6 months, Feels. When a reporter asks if he's reached out, Harriet can say, he wrote her a letter back in January, took full responsibility, promised no contact, and he's kept that promise. The reporter writes it down. It's true, Feels. And boom, the I failed story has physical evidence. Ryan is floored. That's public relations, Mr. Caldwell. Yeah, it's cynical, but it's also the right thing to do, which is just a lucky coincidence. Feels. The letter is something a grown man owes his ex-wife anyway. The fact that we also get a soundbite for a Times profile in 8 months, that's what we call alignment. Ryan then asks the dumbest question ever. Is she going to be all right? Feels. Harriet just stares at him. Mr. Caldwell, your ex-wife is already all right. She walked into a gala on the arm of one of the most feared men in Southern Europe and destroyed your reputation with a 6-minute conversation at table 3. Feels. Your ex-wife is going to be spectacularly all right. Feels. The question today, she says, is whether you're going to be all right, and that depends entirely on you doing exactly what I say for the next 18 months, with 0 improvisation. Can you do that? He says he can. Say it like you mean it. I can do that. Feels, he says with more force. Better. Harriet stands up, gets her coat, doesn't even shake his hand. Mr. Caldwell, one last thing. Off the record. Okay. The board is going to ask you to take a leave of absence tomorrow. You're going to say yes. Feels, the first time they ask. Feels. And you are not going to negotiate. You're not going to give some big speech about building that company from nothing, all right? Nobody wants to hear it. That speech makes everything worse. You say yes. You thank them. You ask how to make the transition smooth. Feels. Then you hang up. You do that one thing tomorrow, you've got a future. You give the speech, you're done. We clear? We're clear. Good. Write the letter tonight. Bill, see you Tuesday. She just walked out, door slams shut. And for a second, Feels. The apartment is dead quiet. Bill gets to his feet. He does that old man back stretch, both hands on his hips, like he's been sitting in that chair forever. Feels. She likes you, he says. That was her liking me? Oh yeah, if she didn't, you wouldn't be writing any letter. She'd have just ghosted you. That was mercy, Ryan. Ryan just stared at the table. Bill? Yes. What was her book called? Which one? Feels. The one that was a finalist. Bill pauses, thinks about it. He starts putting his coat on real slow, like a guy trying to buy himself some time. I think it was called The Quiet Room, he said. Might be wrong. Marjorie read it. Marjorie cried at the end. Feels. Marjorie doesn't cry at books. Ryan. Marjorie is from Warsaw by way of Queens. Marjorie cries at 3 things. Her mom's funeral, her daughter's wedding, and the last episode of some Polish crime show from 1984 that I'm not getting into. Feels. She cried at your ex-wife's book. I remember because I got home from work and she was at the kitchen island, book in her hands, face all wet. I said, what's wrong? And she goes, Bill, this woman can write. No, she didn't. Feels. Marjorie had no idea you knew her. Marjorie read the book in the fall, the year before last. Her book club was reading it. She never connected the dots that Belle Marchetti was Isabella Caldwell. Nobody did. That was the entire point, Ryan. Feels. She didn't want anyone to know, especially you. Why not? Bill just looked at him with this pity that Ryan had done nothing to earn. Because Ryan, she didn't want the part of her life that was hers to get contaminated by the part of her life that was you. Feels. She wanted one single room in the whole apartment that had a lock on it. That's it. The heat kicks on through the vents. The light from the park is turning gray again. Go write your letter, Bill said. Super quiet. I'll grab it tomorrow morning at 7. Feels. Don't fold it weird. No postscript. Don't put a stamp on it. Just the 3 sentences. He lets himself out. Ryan just sits at that table for a long, long time. Then he gets up, walks into the study in the back, and pulls open the bottom drawer of the desk. Feels. He takes out a pad of cream-colored stationery Isabella bought him for his 35th birthday, never used it. He pulls out a fountain pen he'd also never used. He sat down. Feels. He wrote the date at the top. Then he just stared at the blank paper under it forever. Finally, he wrote, Isabella, I was wrong. I am sorry. I will not contact you again. Ryan, he read it 4 times. He actually thought about adding a 4th sentence. Feels. Thought about saying something about her book. He thought about writing, I never read it and I am sorry I never read it. But then he heard Harriet Lohan's voice in his head, cold and small, saying, it will not say, but. So he put the pen down. Feels. He folded the page once, put it in an envelope, addressed it to Ms. Helena Brandt at Pritchard Hayes. It was the first honest-to-God letter he had written in 11 years. Feels. Monday morning showed up exactly how Monday mornings do when you haven't slept a wink. The light coming through the curtains of the apartment on 63rd Street was all thin and pink at 6:40, then white by 7:20, feels, and by 8 the entire bedroom was the color of the inside of a seashell. Isabella had crashed in the guest room again. Luca had taken the couch again, and neither one of them was about to make a big deal out of it, feels. They'd made an unspoken deal to let the physical side of their marriage just happen at its own speed. And that speed wasn't going to be dictated by some ballroom in New York or a bunch of stories in a gossip rag. Feels. At 7:30, Luca knocked super softly on the guest room door. Belle, I'm up. Coffee coming. She came out in that cashmere robe again, hair up, face clean. He'd made eggs. And he did it like he knew what he was doing, which was a side of him she hadn't seen, feels. And for some reason she refused to think about. It was kind of touching. I did not know you could cook. I can't. I can make eggs. I can make pasta. I can make coffee. That is the entire list. That is an acceptable list. It has gotten me this far. Feels. They ate in the quiet kitchen. The tablet on the counter was on, and the stock ticker at the bottom of some business channel was on mute, but you could still see it. Feels. And at 9:31, the ticker flashes red. Caldwell Holdings dropped 6 3/4 points in the first 90 seconds of trading, and then 18 minutes later it drops another 2. Isabella just watched the numbers change. She said nothing. Feels. She felt nothing, which was the part that blew her mind. She'd imagined this exact moment for so long, played out a bunch of different ways, and in every single version she imagined feeling this small, clean hit of satisfaction, a quiet, there, feels. But instead, what she felt was a whole lot of nothing. The stock was just a number. The number was going down. It wasn't her problem anymore. A chunk of her life was being moved around somewhere else by people she'd never even met. Feels. And it was about as interesting to her as the weather, on a day she wasn't planning on going out. Luca was watching her watch the ticker. You are not going to gloat. I thought I would. It turns out I don't want to. Good. Is that good? Feels. It is who you actually are. It is good that you found out. She finished her coffee, went back to the guest room. She ditched the robe for a wool skirt, a black turtleneck, heels, and some low boots. The kind of outfit she'd worn in her mother's kitchen 1,000 times since she was 14. She packed an overnight bag. She slipped the 2 pear-cut diamonds into a little felt pouch and zipped it into an inside pocket. At 10:15, feels, Matteo came up. Feels. He had a garment bag slung over one arm. Sonora. Matteo, your mother called. Said to tell you she is making passatellis. She also said to tell you that your Aunt Paula is there. Oh, she said you would say, oh, feels. Did she say anything else? She said your father is making one of his faces. Which one? She did not specify. It is the face where he thinks something is funny, but he has decided ahead of time he's not going to laugh. Probably, feels. Tell her we leave in 20 minutes. Yes, Sonora. Matteo left. Isabella carried the overnight bag into the kitchen. Luca had changed too. No suit this time, but a dark sweater over a dark shirt, jeans, and boots that looked like they'd seen a winter or two. Feels. He looked like a guy about to meet the in-laws, which technically is exactly what he was. Nervous? She said. No, liar. A little. He will like you. He already likes me. He does not have to like me. He has to decide if I am going to stop liking me at some point, feels, and he has not decided yet. That is a very accurate reading of my father. I have been paying attention. They took 2 cars just like she wanted. He went in his own, a dark sedan with a driver she didn't recognize. She went in her father's, feels, which showed up at 10:40 driven by a guy named Paolo who'd been driving for the Virilis for 22 years and had known her since she was 7, feels. Senorina, Paolo, long time, too long. You look well. I do not. I look tired. You look well. She laughed. She got in the back. The car pulled away from the curb on 63rd Street, and the second car just fell in behind them, keeping a respectful distance. Feels. Manhattan traffic finally opened up a little after the bridge. The Hutchinson was clear. By 11:50, they were pulling up a long gravel drive in Westchester, lined with these bare January sycamores. Feels. And at the end of it was the house she grew up in, a stone colonial with green shutters, a slate roof, and a front door that was painted 4 summers ago a red her mother called Calabrian red, and that her father just called that red. Feels. The door was open before she was even out of the car. Her mother had been posted up at the kitchen window for 40 minutes watching the drive, and swung the front door open the second the tires crunched the gravel. It was the thing she always did. Feels. The thing Isabella grew up complaining about, and the thing she now knew she was going to miss someday in a way that would probably break her. Teresa Varelli was 64 years old, short, with her dark hair in a bun shot through with gray. Feels. And she came marching down the front steps in a cardigan and no coat in 18-degree weather because she hadn't bothered with a coat because her daughter was home. Bella, Mama, come here, Vienna. Isabella walked right into her mother's arms. Feels. Her mother was a full head shorter than her. Her mom smashed her face into Isabella's shoulder, super hard for about 4 seconds, and then shoved her back to get a good look at her before pulling her back in. You are thin. I am not thin. You're thin. Feels. I don't care what you think. I'm going to feed you until Wednesday. Mama, I have things Wednesday. Bella, you sit at my table until Thursday. Your things can wait. Mama, who is the man? Isabella turned. Luca had gotten out of the second car. Feels. He was just standing there on the gravel, keeping his distance, hands at his sides with a little leather case on the ground by his left foot. And he was, Isabella realized, perfectly still. The exact same way he was perfectly still in the ballroom. Feels. That's how he stood when he was nervous and trying to hide it. Mama, this is Luca. Feels. All right, get inside, Luca. Mrs. Varley Felio. Mio, you're going to freeze out here. Luca grabs the case and walks up the gravel drive. Teresa Varley gives him the look. A full 2 seconds of scanning him up, down and up again. Feels. Then she does something Isabella's only seen 3 times. Ever. All 3 were for guys she was giving the ultimate stamp of approval. She reaches up, cups his jaw, locks eyes with him, and gives a single nod. Bravo, ragazzo. Gracias, Sonora. Inside. Feels. Both of you. Your father's in his chair. Aunt Paula's in the kitchen. And whatever you do, don't let her make the coffee. She has no clue what she's doing. I heard that, Teresa. Feels. That voice zings from inside the house. Sharp, smug, and about 1,000,000 miles from friendly. For a split second, Isabella is hit with a wave of childhood nostalgia before she heads up the steps and into the house she grew up in. And get this, Feels. The hall smells exactly the same as it has for 33 years. Sage, lemon, something sizzling. The runner on the floor knew deep red, but it's the exact same shape as every single one that came before it. Feels. The mirror over the table still has that chip in the corner from 1998 when her brother Dario threw a baseball inside. And Dario, who's off in Milan with a wife, 3 kids, and a dog named Ugo, isn't even here. Feels. But his coat is hanging on the hook like he could walk in any second. Aunt Paula is blocking the kitchen doorway. She's 71, widowed 3 times, stands 4'10" in her shoes, and has a savage opinion on every person she's ever laid eyes on. Feels. She inspects Luca with a look that makes Isabella apologize for his entire existence. This one, Paula mutters in Italian to the air. This one's is the one. Paula! What? I'm just making an observation, Teresa. I'm allowed to comment. Feels. Zia Paola. Enough. Bella Cara, you're home. Come give your old aunt a kiss before your mother tries to feed you into a coma. Isabella leans down, kissing her aunt on both cheeks and then her forehead, the exact sequence her aunt demands. Feels. Paola pats her face twice hard, then one last time a bit softer. You did good. Thank you, Zia. In the ballroom, you did very good. Your father told me everything. I've been waiting all morning to tell you. You did very good. Feels. You handled it the Calabrian way. You didn't raise your voice. You didn't cry. You just walked out. A woman who cries in a ballroom is already finished. You didn't cry in the ballroom. I did not cry in the ballroom. Brava. Paola's head swivels slowly. Feels. Her tiny 4'10" frame rotating like a gun turret and locks Luca in her sights. Yes, Sonora, you didn't touch her in the ballroom. Not once. Not once, Sonora. You let her do it herself. Feels. It was her fight to win. Paola stares him down for another long moment, then gives a short, decisive nod and turns back to Isabella. This one, she says again. This one is the one. From deeper inside, a man's voice calls out, low and dry. Feels. It's the sound of a guy who's been enjoying a show he didn't have to direct. Paula, leave the boy alone. I'm not touching the boy, Marco. I'm looking at him. Looking is free. And then Marco Varley appears in the parlor doorway. He's 69 years old, Feels. 6'1", white hair, with a face that was probably hot at 35, but at 69 is something way better than handsome. It's interesting, Feels. He's rocking a gray cardigan, a blue shirt, reading glasses on a cord, and house slippers, total grandpa vibe. Which he is. But he's a whole lot of other things too. Right now, though, in his own front hall, with his daughter standing there, he's just Papa, Feels. Kara, Papa. He opens his arms and she walks right in. He holds her tight, way longer than he would in front of strangers, longer than she even expected. When he lets go, Feels. His eyes are wet, which is not something you ever see from him, and he doesn't even try to hide it. You did well, Kara. Thank you, Papa. Feels. You didn't cry. No, you didn't raise your voice. Nose. Brava. He kisses her forehead. Then, taking his sweet time, he turns to Luca Dantis, who's been standing by the door with the case, not moving a muscle. Luca, Don Marco. You drove? I drove. Feels. You left Matteo behind. He's at the end of the drive. He didn't you'd understand. I understand. Come in, come in. Coffee. Paola is not making the coffee. Teresa is. Luca, you're sitting on my right at lunch. Bella, on my left. Paola, Feels. You can sit wherever and you will stay quiet for at least 15 minutes at a time. Not my rule, Feels. It's the rule of our Blessed Mother who came up with it in 1967 just for you. Vaffanculo, Marco. Language, Paola. There's a young man in the house. He's not that young and he's heard worse. Luca, Feels, who hasn't cracked a smile since getting out of the car, finally smiles. It's the second genuine smile Isabella has seen from him in 24 hours. They all head to the kitchen. It's warm, smelling like broth and butter, Feels. And the big farmhouse table is set for 5 with random plates, a steaming loaf of bread, and a bottle of wine that's already open. Teresa is at the stove. Paola shuffles over to her chair. Everyone knows it's her chair, Feels. Don't even think about sitting there, and folds her hands, Feels. Marco points Luca to the seat on his right. Luke sits. Marco pours him some wine without even asking, then a little for Isabella. He pours a full glass for Paola, who just says grazie, and a half glass for Teresa, who isn't drinking, Feels. Then he pours himself a full one. He raises his glass. A la familia. They all drink. Isabella takes a tiny sip and closes her eyes. The wine is from a special cask her dad keeps, Feels, and it tastes like a bunch of winters she thought she'd forgotten. The passatelli arrives, golden pasta strings in a clear broth with flecks of nutmeg, Feels. Teresa serves the bowls one by one. Nobody even thinks about touching a spoon until Marco does. He picks his up, everyone follows, and the kitchen goes dead silent. Feels. That's the kind of quiet that only happens when you're eating something made by someone who truly loves you. Halfway through, Marco puts his spoon down. Luca. Yes, Don Marco. Stop calling me Don Marco at my kitchen table, Feels. Nobody is Don anyone in this kitchen. Yes, Marco. Better Paola, without looking up, chimes in. He's going to keep calling you Don Marco, Marco. He's from Palermo. They can't help themselves. I'm working on it. Sonora, work faster. Paula, Feels. I am eating my soup. Feels. No, you're not. You're running a commentary. The soup's getting cold. The soup can't get cold.
Teresa's soup breaks the laws of physics.
Teresa, your soup today? Never had it better. Yes, you have, Paola. You say that every single time, Feels. And every time I mean it, and every time I mean it more. Marco picks his spoon back up. He looks over at Isabella, his eyes suddenly super soft. Eat, Kara. She eats. After lunch, Feels. Her dad takes Luca into the front parlor, the room for all the serious talks, and shuts the door. They're in there for almost a full hour, Feels. Isabella just sits in the kitchen with her mom and her aunt peeling clementines. She doesn't ask what's happening. You don't ask. Plus, she doesn't need to. She knows exactly what's going down, Feels. Her father is grilling Luca with a series of questions that don't have right answers, only true ones. And Luca is either going to answer them or he's not. If he fails, he'll walk out of that room with the same stone face he went in with, Feels. And her father will give him a polite handshake at the door and wish him a safe trip. And that'll be it. Isabella will never see Luca Dantis again. The one rule her dad never ever broke was that he decided who gets to come back through that door, Feels. At 12 minutes to 3, the parlor door swings open. Luca walks out first, her father right behind him. Her dad has a hand on Luca's shoulder. Isabella lets out a breath she didn't even know she was holding. Her mom, still at the sink, says, "Good." heels, without even turning. Paula, peeling a clementine with a tiny silver knife, just says, "Told you." Marco walks Luca to the coat rack and hands him his coat. He leans in and says something quiet in Italian, too low for Isabella to hear. Heels. Luca murmurs something back. Marco nods once, pats Luca's shoulder twice, and steps away. "Bella, yes, Papa. Walk him to his car." She stands up and puts on her coat. Heels. She walks Luca down the steps, across the gravel to the black sedan that's been waiting with the engine running all afternoon. They stop at the car door. "How was he?" "He was your father." "That's not an answer." "He asked me 11 questions." Heels. "I answered all 11. He told me 3 things about you I didn't know. He told me 2 things about himself. He said I was the first person he's told in a long time. He told me that the next time I come here," Heels, "I don't need to bring the leather case I brought today, because I don't need to bring anything to this house except myself." "What was in the leather case?" "Money." Heels. "Luca, it's tradition. Papa would never take your cash." "And he didn't. He made me stash it in his desk, claiming it was a fund for your future nieces. He said he was joking. I'm not totally sure. He probably wasn't." "I was afraid of that," she laughed. Heels. Stepping closer, she flattened her hand on his coat lapel just like she did on his chest that morning in the kitchen. But this time, no kiss. She just stood there, her breath a tiny cloud in the January air. "Go home. I'll call you tonight. Call me tonight." Heels. "Isabella, yes." Heels. "Whatever you end up doing about this, about the marriage, the city, where you live, any of it, take your time." "I will. Don't let anyone else run your clock." "I won't." "Good." He got in the car. The driver cruised down the gravel path, Heels, past the naked sycamores and out the front gate. Isabella just stood there in the cold, watching the car until it vanished. Behind her, the front door creaked open. Her father stepped out in a cardigan and slippers, Heels, a combo her mom was absolutely going to tear him a new one for later. "Papa Cara, you approve." "I approved back in September, Ella. This isn't some big reveal today." "I know." Heels. "I just wanted to hear it out loud." He carefully walked down the steps in his slippers and stood beside her, putting his arm around her shoulders. She rested her head against his. Heels. Her dad smelled like sage and bergamot, and the specific tobacco he'd smoked for 41 years before her mom made him quit in 2016. "Some scents just don't wash off a man." "Cara," he said. "Yes, you're going to be fine. I know." Heels. "Better than fine." "Maybe. Not maybe, Papa." "Yes, I was scared for a minute in the ballroom right before I walked in." "Of course you were. Only a stupid woman wouldn't have been." Heels. "You're not a stupid woman. I didn't raise stupid women." But get this, she wasn't scared of him, nope. She was scared of herself, scared that she'd get in there, look at him, and feel something she didn't want to. Sadness, pity, Heels, some echo of what she used to feel. "And when I walked in, I looked at him, and I felt nothing, just nothing, and that scared me way more than the other version would have." Marco went quiet for a long time. Up at the house, Heels, her mom and her aunt were glued to the kitchen window, doing a terrible job of pretending they weren't watching. "Cara, listen to me." "I'm listening." Heels. "When a love dies, it's not always some big loud explosion. Sometimes it is, and we know how to deal with that one. Cry, we break some plates, we call our mom. We spent a summer in Italy. That one's easy. The hard one is when a love dies, quiet." Heels. "One morning you wake up and it's just gone. You didn't hear it leave. You don't know when it happened. That one makes you feel like you're the broken one. You're not. It just means the love was tired and it left. You didn't kill it." "He didn't kill it." Heels. "It just ran out of gas." "Some of them do. Ours won't. Your mother's and mine, but some do. That feeling you had in the ballroom when you looked at him and felt nothing." Heels. "That's not a sign you're broken, Bella. That's the sign that the love was dead and buried a long time before last night. You were just finally seeing the tombstone." He paused. "Come inside." Heels. "Your mother is about to go ballistic if I'm out here in slippers for one more second." She laughed and turned, his arms still around her. They walked back up the gravel drive to the house where she grew up. Her mom opened the door before they even reached it, Heels, and her aunt was already at the stove making a second pot of coffee she was definitely told not to make, Heels. And Isabella Varley walked through that door into a kitchen that smelled like sage, lemon, and broth. For the first time in a very long time, she was home. The winter that hit after that January night was one of the coldest New York had seen in a decade, Heels. Isabella spent most of it hiding out upstate in a guest cottage on her parents' property. Her mother, without even asking, had set it all up for her in early February with fresh sheets, a new reading lamp, Heels, and a wool blanket that belonged to Isabella's grandmother. She went up for a weekend and just never left. A weekend became a week became 3. Sometime in late February, Eels. Her mom stopped asking when she was going back and just started ordering her favorite pasta by the truckload. The cottage was small, just 2 rooms and a kitchen, tucked away at the back of the property, its windows looking out into the woods. Eels. Isabella worked at a table by the window every single morning from 7 until 11, writing longhand in a notebook. It was a novel she'd started 3 years ago and given up on, but it came roaring back to her the week after the ballroom showdown. Eels. She couldn't explain it, so she didn't try. She wrote about a woman who lost a child. The woman wasn't her. The husband wasn't Ryan. But the grief she'd been lugging around for 7 years, she poured all of it into that character on that page. Eels. And in writing it out, the grief in her own chest got smaller, day by day, until by the 1st of March she could read what she'd written and not feel her hands go numb. Eels. Luca showed up on the weekends. He didn't push for anything more. He'd drive up late on Friday nights, after some meeting kept him in the city, and he'd stay in a guest room in the main house. Her mom put him there the first weekend, and he never moved. Eels. He ate with the family on Saturdays. He walked with Isabella in the woods behind the cottage on Sundays. He never asked what she was writing. He never asked when she was coming back. He never asked her anything, really. And slowly, Eels, she realized his not asking was its own kind of question, one so patient it was literally changing who she was. Eels. On a Sunday in the middle of March, on a trail they'd probably walked 15 times, she stopped cold and said without looking at him, "I think I want to move the rest of my things out of the Ireland." "All right. I don't know where I want to move them to yet." Eels. "All right. I'm not ready to move them to your apartment on 63rd. I'm not asking you to. I know you're not." "Good. But I think I might be ready for that in the summer." "All right. That's all you're going to say about it? What do you want me to say?" Eels. She laughed and started walking again, him right beside her. "Luca, yes. Is it exhausting for you, being this patient?" He thought about it, like he did with most of her questions, like he was turning it over in his hands. Eels. "No," he said finally. "It's the opposite of exhausting. I spent 15 years as a man who had to move fast. A patient life is easier. I didn't know it was going to be easier. I found that out this winter." "You're saying I taught you something." Eels. "I'm saying you let me find out something. Not the same thing." "No, it's not." They kept walking. By the end of March, the story about the gala had mostly blown over. Then a long-form piece dropped in the New Yorker in the first week of April. Eels. It was written by a woman who was at table 7 that night and who sat on the story for 2.5 months verifying every single quote. The piece was good. In some parts, it was devastating. Eels. It named Ryan once in the first paragraph, and after that only referred to him as her ex-husband, which, as Helena Brandt told Isabella on the phone, was the absolute worst thing you could do to a guy with his brand of ego. Eels. The piece didn't even mention Vanessa by name. Vanessa had already moved back to Cleveland in the first week of February. In a move that surprised everyone, she'd enrolled in a paralegal program and started dating a high school teacher named Marcus, who, Eels, at the time of publication, had no idea about any of this. The New Yorker piece ended with a line Isabella read 3 times the morning it came out, then put down and never looked at again. The line was, Eels, "The most dangerous thing a man can do is assume that a quiet woman is a small one." Luca read the line too. He didn't say a word. He just left the magazine on her kitchen counter and went out to split wood with her father for an hour. Eels. Which was a new thing the two of them had started doing on Sundays that none of the women in the family understood. Eels. Ryan Caldwell went on leave from Caldwell Holdings on the first Tuesday of February. He didn't make a speech at the board meeting. The first time they asked, he just said yes, exactly like his lawyer, Harriet Lowen, told him to. Eels. He thanked the board and asked how he could help with the transition. Peter Helbrook, Bill told him later, looked totally shocked. Peter had come in expecting a fight. Peter left the call thinking that, against all odds, Eels, Ryan Caldwell might be a slightly different person than he was 3 weeks before. He was and he wasn't. The change was smaller than Peter Helbrook realized, but it was also real. Eels. So Ryan gets exiled to a rental in Katona for the spring, not because his therapist is scenery, but because his therapist he'd do something monumentally stupid. So what's his new life? Therapy, twice a week, no booze, no women. He actually read a whole book, a first in 11 years, a fact so pathetic his shrink made him say it out loud. And what book did he read on a random Saturday in April? Isabella's novel. Yeah, that one. The one nominated for the Pan and Fallner feels. And get this, when he's done, he just sits there, book closed, and full-on ugly cries for 20 minutes straight. But here's the plot twist. He doesn't call her, doesn't write some desperate letter. He actually listens to his therapist Bill's warnings. Feels. He puts the book away, rolls up to therapy on Monday morning, and lays it all out. She can really write. And I completely ignored that for 7 years, and I need you to know that I get what a dirtbag move that was. His therapist, feels. This Dr. Freitas with gray hair and an office full of plants just looks at him and says, "Good. That's the start of guilt that actually teaches you something, Mr. Caldwell." Feels. So does he go back to his throne at Caldwell Holdings? Hell no. The leave of absence turns into a full-blown resignation by June. The press release paints it as a happy mutual breakup, but behind the scenes, not mutual, not friendly at all, feels. But he doesn't put up a fight, because his lawyer Harriet told him not to, and because he finally gets it. The company was never his. The apartment wasn't his. The marriage wasn't his. He was just the front man, the poster boy, feels. And he'd played the part well for a long time, but the show was over. Now he had to figure out who the hell he actually was. He dumps the penthouse on Central Park West at the end of July, takes a loss he can eat, feels, and buys a smaller spot uptown his sister pointed him to. He moves in with just 12 boxes and none of the art from his old life, feels. The paintings? Sent straight to an auction house. He doesn't even show up. He's standing in that empty penthouse on the last day of July, sun blasting through the windows of a room he couldn't even remember the color of, and makes a promise to himself, feels. He's not going to be some sob story, and he's not going to be some epic comeback legend either. He's just going to be a 42-year-old dude in a smaller apartment, learning how to not hate himself. It wasn't some heroic plan. It wasn't inspiring. It was, feels. As Dr. Eufers told him, the first plan he'd ever made that wasn't a complete fantasy. By Isabella was long gone. But not to Luca's place. Not yet, feels. She snagged a whole floor in a small building in the West Village. Old wood floors, massive windows, and zero stuff on the walls. On the first day of July, she just sat on the floor of the empty living room, coffee in hand, feels, and watched the sun crawl across the floorboards for an hour before even thinking about unpacking. Her mom came to help. Her aunt came to criticize, obviously. Then on day 2, Luca shows up with a hammer and a level and just starts putting up 6 shelves, feels. Nobody even asked him to. When he's done, he says, "I won't do this again if you don't want me to." Isabella just goes, "No, the shelves are good. Keep the shelves," feels. And that became their little inside joke for the rest of the summer. She absolutely crushes the novel in August. Gives it to her agent on the last Friday of the month, feels. The agent calls her the next Tuesday and literally sobs on the phone for 90 seconds before she can form actual words. And when she finally does, all she says is, "Belle, this is the one. This is the one. This is the one." Isabella's in her kitchen, feels. Phone to her ear, staring at those shelves Luca put up back in July. She doesn't cry, her agent's got that covered for both of them, but something inside her chest just lit up. A warmth she hadn't felt in a very, very long time. Feels. The book drops the next spring. It wins everything. She does a quick tour and bounces. No TV appearances. She does one single interview with a journalist who spent 3 months writing her these careful, handwritten letters. The interview was fine, feels. And then she went dark for a long time. At the end of August, she and Luca drive up to her dad's 70th birthday party. The house is rammed. Dario flew in from Milan with his wife and 3 kids. Feels. Aunt Paula showed up from her condo in Yonkers with a pot of God knows what that she refused to let anyone else carry. 2 of her dad's oldest buddies from the old neighborhood even came up from Philly. Feels. At some point, after the cake but before the espresso, her dad stands up at the head of the table, taps his glass, and the whole room shuts up. "I'm not going to give a speech," he says. "Yes, you are, Marco," Aunt Paula yells. "Paula, I'm not giving a speech," yells. "I'm giving 6 sentences. 1 for each decade of my life, and 1 extra 'cause I'm greedy." He raises his glass. 1, I've been very lucky. 2, I don't deserve the luck I've had. 3, my wife is the only reason I survived the years when luck was running low. Feels. 4, my son Dario has given me 3 grandchildren and has made me proud every single day, and I haven't told him that enough, so tonight I'm telling him. Feels. Dario, at the other end of the table, just buries his face in his napkin. 5, my daughter Bella did something this year that I'm going to carry with me for the rest of my life. I'm not going to say what it is because she knows, feels, and she hates it when I make speeches about her. 6. I'm going to keep living as long as I can. And when I can't anymore, I'm going to go quietly, and nobody in this room is allowed to make a fuss. He paused. 7. Sin sin, sin tin, the whole table chanted back. Feels. Isabella, sitting right next to him, just reached over and grabbed his hand. He gave it one tight squeeze and didn't let go for a long, long time. Feels. Luca was on his right side. Luca caught her eye over her father and didn't smile. He never smiled in rooms like that. But his eyes were softer than she'd ever seen them. And when her father finally let go of her hand, Feels, he reached for Luca's and held on to his for just as long. Not a word was said the wedding. The real one, the one Isabella wanted, went down the following October in a little church in Rye. Only 41 people were there, Aunt Paola cried. Feels. Dario's youngest daughter was the flower girl, threw all the petals on the ground, then started crying because she'd thrown the flowers on the ground. Feels. Isabella wore a simple cream dress that belonged to her grandmother, Constanza, tailored by some woman in the Bronx her mom's been using since 1974. She didn't walk down the aisle to some cliché wedding march. Nope, Feels. She walked down to a Neapolitan song her dad sang to her when she was 4, played by a single cello. Luca was at the altar in a dark suit, and of course he didn't cry. But when she got to the front and stood across from him, Feels, he reached out and touched the side of her jaw for a split second with 2 fingers. For him, that was basically a total meltdown. She knew it. He knew she knew it. And nobody else in the church needed to. Feels. They had a small dinner at the house afterward. At some point, Aunt Paula cornered Luca in the kitchen and told him some insanely long story in Italian about her late second husband, a story he wouldn't tell Isabella about for years. Feels. Dario got wasted and sang something in the living room Isabella hadn't heard since she was 12. Her parents had a slow dance in the kitchen to a song on the radio, and Isabella just watched them from the doorway. Feels, with Luca's hand on the small of her back, and thought, this is the thing. Feels. They hit Italy for 3 weeks after the wedding, then came back. Kids took way longer than she thought. She was 34 by then, and for a while, she thought it just wasn't going to happen. She had a private meltdown about it with her mom one weekend, Feels, then went back to her desk and wrote for another 6 months. And then, out of nowhere, in the spring of her 35th year, she found out it was happening after all. A girl. They named her Costanza, after Isabella's grandmother, Feels. She had her father's quiet nature and her mother's eyes, and a temper that Aunt Paula immediately took credit for, but that her mom swore was a Varley family curse going back 4 generations. A boy followed 2 years later, Feels. They named their son Matteo, a nod to the guy who drove Isabella's cars for years, now retired and living in Queens with a prized garden and a grandson he walks to school. When they broke the news to the old man, Feels, he went silent for a solid minute before declaring, "Sonora, I'm not going to cry in this kitchen. It is not the kind of kitchen I cry in." And then, of course, he totally cried, right there at her island in his coat, Feels. So Isabella hugged him, a first in 21 years of knowing the guy, and he actually let her, another first. The biggest news, though? The move to Europe was officially canceled. Feels. Luca really thought they'd be gone. His whole world had been Polmo and Zurich. But by the time their daughter Costanza was 2, it was painfully obvious Isabella wasn't going anywhere that was more than a day's drive from her parents and her aunt. So Luca, Feels, who learned in his 30s that loving a woman means you better be ready to live near her people, just rolled with it. He held on to his Zurich apartment, jetting over 4 or 5 times a year for a week. Once Costanza was old enough, she went with him, Feels. Then Matteo got his turn. The result? The kids grew up speaking 3 languages and treating airports like their backyard, a small gift Isabella was happy to give them since she never had it, Feels. Luca's line of work got a makeover, too. By the time Costanza hit 4, the parts of his job that involved sitting deadly still in rooms full of dangerous dudes had been outsourced to younger guys. Guys who were, as he put it, less tired and more hungry, Feels. He kept his hand in a few things, sat on a couple of boards. But he never, ever talked shop at the dinner table. His kids had 0 clue what their dad actually did all day, and Isabella wasn't about to spill the beans. That was Luca's story to tell, Feels, and she trusted him to drop that bomb on his kids when the time was right, Feels. Her father passed away that summer, the year Costanza turned 7 and Matteo turned 5. It wasn't some big shock. He'd been sick all spring, so the family knew it was coming, and they all got the chance to say their goodbyes, a luxury not everyone gets, Feels. He died in his own bed, his wife beside him, his kids at the foot of the bed, and his sister downstairs making coffee she wouldn't touch. Isabella just sat there, holding his hand, and didn't shed a tear until later. When she finally broke heels, she went deep into the woods behind her cottage and just let it all out, alone. That kind of grief doesn't shrink. It just gets older, moves into a spare room in your soul, and you learn how to live in the rest of the house around it. Heels. Luca had barely known his own father, so he got it without needing a single word of explanation. He didn't try to fix her. He didn't promise it would pass. He just cooked dinner on the night she couldn't. He read to the kids when she was checked out. Heels. He'd sit beside her in bed, in total silence, when she didn't want to talk. And one night, 2 weeks after the funeral, when she woke up at 3 in the morning and couldn't move from the kitchen island, he came downstairs. Barefoot in his undershirt, heels, he pulled up a stool next to her and just said, "Belle," heels. And all she said back was, "I know." That was the whole conversation. The next winter, her mom came to live with them in the city. She'd never say she was lonely, but she was. And she'd never admit the big house in Rye was too much for her. But it was. Heels. So Isabella and Luca moved her into a top-floor bedroom they now realized they'd been saving for this exact moment all along. Her mother arrived with 4 suitcases, a little wooden crucifix from her own mom, Heels, and the framed black and white photo of a 26-year-old Marco Varley that had hung in the Rye dining room for 51 years. Heels. She put that picture on her new dresser and it never came down. Aunt Paula, though, didn't move in. 2 years after Isabella's father, she died in her condo in Yonkers, taking an afternoon nap, exactly how she'd always wanted to go. Heels. The family pretty much agreed it was the only exit strategy for a woman like her. At the funeral, Isabella's mother started laughing and crying at the same time in the front pew, because some guy behind them muttered Paula had been a handful. Heels. Teresa just whipped around and said, at full volume, she was not a handful, Angelo. She was a full-course meal and you were never man enough to finish it. The entire pew absolutely broke down laughing. Heels. The years just flew by. Costanza at 15 announced she was going to be a lawyer. Matteo at 13 declared he was going to be a chef. Luca at 54 announced he was going gray at the temples and was actually thinking about wearing a hat. Heels. And Isabella at 48 published her 6th book, a novel about an old man dying slowly, surrounded by love, which she dedicated in 2 words, to Papa. She cried again writing that. And she thought about Ryan sometimes. Heels. Less and less as the years passed. She didn't hate him, not anymore. That first year after the gala, she was ice cold about him. A quiet rage Luca understood and just let be. Heels. By the 2nd year, that ice started to thin. 5 years in, it was basically melted. She'd hear things about him here and there. He'd sold the company, the one that was never really his to sell, and ended up with a much smaller slice of the pie anyway. Heels. He moved into that smaller apartment and just stayed there. Never remarried. He quietly dated 2 women over 10 years, a teacher and a doctor, but nothing ever went public. He worked, or so Helena Brandt once mentioned, Heels, for a small nonprofit doing something about literacy in prisons. He kept his name off of everything. Heels. He had, as Elena put it, become someone no one expected. The kind of guy you just don't have to think about. And Isabella was glad for that in a detached kind of way. She didn't feel responsible for the change, didn't take any credit, Heels. But she was glad it happened, the way you're glad when someone you used to know stops being a total dumpster fire. 12 years after that night at the Monte Verde, on a Saturday in January, Isabella was at her kitchen window washing lettuce. Heels. Costanza was on a train down from college. Matteo was in the living room, surrounded by 6 open cookbooks. Heels. Luca was in the backyard, covered in snow, doing something with a shovel that her mother was yelling at him about through the window. As the water ran over the lettuce and the light outside turned blue, Isabella looked at her husband, her son, Heels, her mother at the table, and thought about the woman she was that night at the Hartwell Gala. That woman was 33, wearing platinum silk and diamonds, running on a calm she'd rehearsed for 6 hours in a hotel bathroom. Heels. That woman believed she was walking into a ballroom to take something apart. And she did. She walked in and completely dismantled a public life with just a few words in front of everyone. Heels. And if the story ended right there, it would have been a damn good revenge story. A satisfying one. Isabella wouldn't have been ashamed of it. But the story didn't end there. That was the part she finally got. Heels. A woman who walks into a room to blow up a life can walk out with all the broken pieces and realize, over a long winter, that the pieces are not what she wanted. The target was never the pieces. The target was a different life, feels. And you don't get a different life by smashing the old one. You just get an empty space. The different life comes, if it ever comes, from what you decide to build in that empty space after the explosion, feels. And she had filled that empty space with a hell of a lot. Model, feels. She'd stacked a novel, then another one. She'd stacked a real marriage, not the kind for show. She put down roots in a house with creaky floors and a shelf Luca installed in a single afternoon. She added 2 kids to the roster, feels. A mother got a whole room on the top floor. She threw in Sunday mornings trekking through the woods. She even made room for a heavy grief that decided to move in with her. And she kept her father's voice in her head, the one she still heard saying, feels. Saying brava, saying, don't you dare try to do this all alone. She shoved all of it into the crater where her old life used to be. And over 12 years, feels, it all fused together into a life she couldn't have dreamed of the night she walked out of the Monte Verde. Feels. That night, all she could picture was victory. But victory? Turns out it was a pretty small thing.
Lasted all of 2 hours.
It was over the second she slid into the back of a black car on Park Avenue. Everything that came after was just life, feels. And it definitely wasn't a victory, because that's the wrong word for it. Victory is something you do to someone else. What came next was something you do for yourself. Slowly, over a long damn time, feels. With a couple of people who were actually paying attention, she turned off the faucet to her old world. She shook the lettuce out in the strainer, and behind her, her mother said in Italian that the lettuce didn't need to be washed for that long. Feels. She said it every single Saturday, and for 12 years, Isabella had washed the lettuce for that long every single Saturday. Neither of them was ever backing down. The back door creaked open. In comes Luca, snow on his boots, snow on his shoulders, feels, his face red from the biting cold. Your mother, he said, is going to make me split wood in June, July, and August if she keeps yelling about that shovel. She's going to make you split wood in June, July, and August anyway. I know, feels. You're going to make me do it anyway. I know, Luca. Come here. He walked over. He slapped his freezing hands on the small of her back for a second, and she yelped, then burst out laughing. And from the table, her mother just muttered, Madonna, feels, and from the couch, Matteo chimed in, gross, feels. And Luca whispered right next to her ear, you good, Belle? Yeah, good, Luca. Yeah, it is good, isn't it? He knew exactly what she meant, he always knew. He pressed his forehead against hers for just a second. Yeah, Belle, it is good. Outside, feels, the snow started up again, coming down slow in thick fat flakes the size of small coins. Feels. The exact same kind of snow that was falling on Park Avenue 12 years earlier when a woman in a platinum dress walked out of a ballroom and into the rest of her life. Inside the kitchen, the radiator was humming. The lettuce was in the colander, feels. And a train from Providence was hauling a 19-year-old girl down the Hudson line, straight to her mother's house. The oven was preheating, and a boy on the couch was trying to pick between 2 different recipes, feels. And a woman at the table was humming a tune her own mother taught her 65 years ago, feels. And a man was shrugging off his wet coat. Here's the ultimate plot twist. Isabella had finally figured out that the best revenge isn't making the other person small. They make themselves small all on their own, eventually, if they're that kind of person, feels. And if they're not, no amount of ballroom drama is ever going to shrink them for you. The best revenge isn't even revenge. The best revenge is what you build with your own 2 hands during the quiet, ordinary years after the big showdown, feels. With the people who were waiting for you to finally notice they were there. The best revenge is a Saturday afternoon in January with wet lettuce, your mom correcting you, and your husband's cold hands on the small of your back, feels. She had marched into that gala to win a war she'd already won. It took her 12 years of winter Saturdays in a kitchen to finally get it. The gala wasn't the win. The victory was everything that came after. The victory feels, and would always be the slow, boring grind of building a life after the old one got torched, of choosing every morning to stay in a life you made on purpose instead of one that was arranged for you. The snow just kept falling. The radiator hummed. Someone, feels, probably Matteo, flipped on the kettle. Her mother pushed herself up slowly, both hands on the table, and shuffled to the stove to start some other dish that didn't need starting. Luca hung his coat on the hook. Outside, feels. The shovel was right where he'd left it, and a gentle blanket of snow was already starting to cover it up. Feels. Isabella Varley, 45 years old, novelist, wife, mother, daughter, stood at her own kitchen sink in her own house with her entire family behind her. She looked out at the falling snow and didn't think for 1 second about the ballroom, heels, or the platinum dress, or the man at table 3, or any of it. She thought about dinner. She thought the lettuce is washed and Costanza's train gets in at 6, and I need to pull the bread out of the freezer. That was the real ending, heels. The one nobody warns you about when you're 33 and planning your big entrance. The story you're actually building isn't the one you strut into a ballroom to announce, heels. The story you're building is the one where, on a totally normal Saturday 12 years later, you realize you don't have to tell the ballroom story at all anymore. And that, in the end, was the thing she had rebuilt. Not an empire, not a kingdom, a kitchen, heels, a family, a life so damn good that the loudest night of it had faded into just some story that happened a long time ago. To a younger woman she still remembered with a kind of fondness, heels. The way you remember a friend who helped you move one summer and then moved away. The one you thank years later when you're finally settled in, for every single thing she did.